Chapter 1589. Old Sim Brand. Old Carl, who was about to enter, stopped in his tracks, and looked at Meg in disbelief. "Mr. Mac, are you saying that the rum sold in your shop is brewed by Master Old Sim himself?" "It's the real deal." Meg nodded with a smile. Although the real Old Sim had passed away, Hannah's brewing skills were not inferior to her grandfather's, so the people of the Falk tribe still called the rum brewed by Hannah as Old Sim. It was considered a rather well-known local brand. How is that possible?" Old Carl stared at Meg in disbelief. "You will know after you try it," Meg said with a smile. "All right. I do want to see if this Old Sim brand rum is authentic." Old Sim nodded, and walked into the restaurant quickly. He chose a seat nearby, and flipped open the menu on the table eagerly. There was an additional item in the alcohol column: Old Sim brand rum, 1,000 copper coins per glass. What a shocking price! The customer who shared a table with Old Carl said in shock after glancing at the price. If this is really Old Sim brand rum, then this price is indeed a little shocking. Old Carl looked at the menu, and raised his voice. "Shockingly cheap." "Yes. Let's not talk about Old Sim's brand. An authentic bottle of ordinary rum imported from the Falk tribe can be sold for 500 to 600 copper coins in Chaos City. The ones from the slightly more famous distilleries can easily be sold for thousands of copper coins. Some time ago, a poor fellow was cheated, and bought a bottle of Old Sim brand rum that cost 5,000 copper coins. In the end, it was a small workshop in Chaos City that made the Old Sim brand rum for 1,000 copper coins per glass. This price is indeed shockingly cheap." A man who had a wine flask with him sat down opposite Old Carl with a smile. "You know your stuff." Old Carl smiled at that man. When he saw Yabamiya walking over, he directly said, "I'll have a serving of a husband and wife long slice and a glass of rum." "All right." Yabamiya nodded. "I'll have a small spicy grilled fish, a glass of rum and a glass of beer," the man sitting opposite Old Carl said with a smile. "Okay, please wait a moment." Yabamiya walked to the next table after ordering for all the customers at that table. Carl could be considered a regular customer of Mamie's. As the owner of a cloth shop, he didn't have any bad habits except for a sip of alcohol. There weren't many good winemakers in Chaos City, and only a few wineries' fruit wines were drinkable. He would usually ask someone to bring wine from other places. Mamie's beer was the most delightful beer that he had tasted in Chaos City. Paired with the spicy grilled fish, it was a delightful combination. However, even though beer was refreshing, for someone like him who drank alcohol all year round, he always felt that it was a little lacking. As such, he would always bring a small jug of beer with him when he came to eat. The jug of beer was filled with aged wine that he had asked someone to bring back from Rodu. Only after drinking a few mouthfuls of beer would he feel a little tipsy. As for rum, it was also one of his favorites. Old Sim's wine was something that could only be chanced upon. It was basically priceless in Chaos City. Even someone like him, who had been drinking for 20 to 30 years, had to wait in the aisles. The feeling of drinking fake wine was not a good feeling. Recently, he heard that there was a coup in the Falk tribe, and the price of rum had skyrocketed. Even normal rum wasn't easy to find anymore. As he was worried that he would buy fake alcohol from black-hearted merchants, he hadn't drunk rum for 2 months. Today, when he saw Mamie's launching rum under Old Sim's brand, he was pleasantly surprised, but also a little suspicious. A bottle of rum was hard to come by on the market. Why was it sold by the glass in Mr. Mac's shop like beer? It was only 1,000 copper coins. Even if it was fake, Carl wouldn't feel the pinch. Hence, although he was suspicious, he still ordered a glass. Old Carl was still sitting opposite him. If it was fake alcohol, then there would be another story of black-hearted merchants who sold fake alcohol to those who knew them. "Boss, will people really order my rum? Will the people in Chaos City not be used to this kind of alcohol?" In the kitchen, Hannah looked at the customers outside worriedly. Although she was very confident in her brewing skills, she was afraid that the rum wouldn't be acclimatized to a new place. "Don't worry. Although rum is a niche alcohol in Chaos City, there is still a very good place for it to grow," Meg answered as he cooked the fried rice. He had spent some time to check on the alcohol situation in Chaos City before. The local distilleries were of a low standard, and couldn't satisfy the needs of some drinkers who wanted high-quality alcohol. Hence, there were specialized merchants who brought alcohol back from all over to sell, and the market was quite big. Although rum was a niche alcohol, that was because it wasn't easy to obtain and transport it. The roads in the Twilight Forest weren't easy to walk on, and alcohol wasn't easy to transport. Hence, there wasn't a lot of rum shipped to Chaos City. Meg's purpose of launching rum at Amy's was to cultivate a batch of high-quality loyal customers for his distillery in the future. Then, he wouldn't have to worry about sales. "We have ordered a total of 18 glasses of rum. One for customers 1 and 3 at table 3, one for customer 2 at table 4, and one for table 6. Yabamiya walked into the kitchen and began to report the order. Barbara stood at the entrance of the kitchen with her eyes closed. Glasses of amber rum floated out of the round glasses and landed accurately in front of the customers that Yabamiya had reported. "Wow, so cool. A spatial magic caster is in charge of serving the dishes. This restaurant is so cool," a little girl exclaimed as she clapped her hands. The customers smiled at the little girl's naive look. Of course, this was indeed very cool. However, many people were attracted by the fragrant wine fragrance that drifted through the air. It was a fragrance that made people happy. Just by smelling it, they felt like they were intoxicated. However, the glasses weren't big, and a small glass of rum cost 1,000 copper coins. Some customers who didn't know how to drink felt that the price was a little too high, and couldn't help but feel pity for those who ordered rum. Thud, with a soft thud, 2 glasses landed in front of Old Carl and Karu. Both of their gazes were attracted by the transparent glasses filled with amber liquid in front of them at the same time. This glass was smaller than a beer glass, and didn't have a handle. It was a glass that could be held with one's hand. A strong alcohol aroma wafted towards them impatiently. The mellow aroma seemed to have a hint of white oak's aroma, and made both of their eyes light up at the same time. "It's this aroma. It's this aroma. The aroma of the rum brewed by Master Old Sim. This unique aroma can't be replicated. It's definitely it," Old Carl exclaimed in surprise. He couldn't hide his excitement. On the other hand, Karu lowered his head and took a deep whiff of the aroma. He revealed an intoxicated expression, and also couldn't hide his excitement. "Not only is this brewed by Master Old Sim, this is rum that has been in the cellar for more than 15 years. Rum of this quality, coupled with Master Old Sim's golden brand, can be sold for at least 5,000 copper coins for a cup." Chapter 1590. A glass of rum was placed on the table, and it ignited the passion of the customers who ordered rum instantly. Good alcohol couldn't fool anyone. Of course, those who didn't know the good stuff were an exception. Even if this first batch of customers who ordered rum weren't rum aficionados, they had at least drunk it a few times. They could tell that it was the real deal just by looking at the quality and smelling the aroma. Old Carl picked up the glass carefully, and looked at it carefully in the direction of the floor-to-ceiling window. The amber-colored rum was clear and translucent without any impurities. Although this glass wasn't as grand as a beer glass, it was enough for an ordinary person to drink a glass of rum of such high quality. Old Carl placed the glass beside his mouth and took a sip. The delicate and sweet taste was intoxicating. The aroma was heavy and there was a hint of wood in it. Only the aged wine that was stored in an oak barrel would have such a wonderful taste. He had been thinking about that small bottle of rum for 18 years. That was only a bottle of 3-year-old rum, and it was also made by Master Old Sim. He originally thought that it would be very difficult for him to drink rum made by Master Old Sim again in his life. He didn't expect that he would be able to drink such authentic rum that had been kept in the cellar for a mere 1,000 copper coins at Mamie Restaurant. After a long while, old Carl opened his eyes slowly, and lamented, "I didn't expect that I would really be able to drink rum made by Master Old Sim again. This Mr. Mac is something. It's not just something. Mr. Mac is really something." Karu's glass was also half empty. His cheeks were flushed, and he couldn't hide his agitation. Anyone in the drinking circle who had a bottle of unopened rum made by Master Old Sim that had been in the cellar for more than 15 years would be very impressive. After all, this was a high-quality rum that was specially provided for the Fok tribe's nobles and chiefs. However, no one would expect that he would be able to drink rum of such quality in a restaurant in Chaos City. Furthermore, he only spent 1,000 copper coins. If this were to spread out, the rum lovers in Chaos City would probably be in an uproar. He didn't know what methods Boss Mag used to be able to get such high-quality rum and sell it at such a low price. He couldn't be any more conscientious. It even made him a little worried if he would make a loss. 1,000 copper coins for a cup of wine was not cheap, but the people who ordered the wine said it was worth it. The response seems to be pretty good. Meg heard the praises and excited voices in the kitchen and wasn't too surprised. Hannah's wine was indeed good. This batch of wine should have been brewed by her grandfather. There was no need to doubt or worry about the quality. The customers who ordered the rum gave extremely high comments and feedback, which made some customers who didn't know much about rum, but who also liked rum, unable to resist the temptation and also tried to order rum. Karu took small sips. Before the grilled fish was served, he had already drunk half of the rum in his hand. Seeing Yabamiya pass by, he hurriedly raised his hand and said, "Miss, can you help me fill this wine pot with rum? You just have to charge as much as you want." Old Carl's eyes lit up when he heard that. He began to search in his pocket to see if there was anything he could use to hold the rum. It would be even better to bring such good wine back and take a sip from time to time. Many customers were tempted when they heard that. Some of the customers who had wine pots with them already smiled. They would bring some back and call a few of their old drinking buddies to let them see the world. "I'm sorry, customer. The wine in the restaurant is not allowed to be taken out, and we don't provide takeaway service," Yabamiya rejected with a smile. "Then can I just have 1 cup? I can even pay more. How about 1,500 copper coins for a cup?" Karu said with a sincere face. He had a bad habit. No matter where he went, he liked to take a sip or two of wine when he was free. He didn't drink much, but he couldn't drink less. Today, he came across such a good wine. If he could fill the wine pot and take a small sip from time to time, wouldn't it be a great pleasure? "I'm sorry. This is the restaurant's rule." Yabamiya rejected without hesitation. "All right, I'm being greedy." Karu sighed. He could understand the reason behind this. Such a good wine was being sold at such a low price. According to the market price, it was selling the wine at a loss. If someone wanted to pack it up and take it away, they would be able to resell it at several times the profit. "Miss Mia, I have a friend who has been bedridden for 3 years. He's going to die soon, so he wants to drink a cup of Master Old Sim's rum before he dies." "Look." An orc at the side said affectionately. "He's my customer. You can take a look at the rules behind the menu," Mia replied with a smile. "Hee hee. I'm just kidding." That orc chuckled instantly. He scratched his head embarrassedly and said, "My father always says that our tribe is just beside the Fog tribe. We've moved to Chaos City for decades, and the thing that we can't forget is Master Old Sim's rum. I don't know much about wine, and have been cheated by the wine peddlers many times over the years. It's fine if I lose money, but being laughed at by my old man is the worst. He can't walk very well now, so I want to bring a cup back for him to try. So many people here said that it's real, so I think it must be true this time. However, we know Mamie's rules, too. I'd better wait for my old man to get better before I bring him here to drink it." Yabamiya looked at that orc. His lips moved slightly, but he still nodded slightly, and said, "All right." He then walked to the next customer. "I didn't expect so many people in the faraway Chaos City know that my grandpa likes the rum he brews," Hannah said softly as she stood at the entrance of the kitchen and looked at the excited people, as well as the people who were lost in their thoughts and memories. A teardrop slid down from the corner of her eye and landed on the ground. However, she quickly wiped the tear stain away. "Boss, I've decided. Apart from building the brewing machine, I still want to brew properly. I don't want Old Sim and the other two to fail in my hands." Hannah turned back to look at Meg, and said with certainty. Then, she revealed a radiant smile. "That's pretty good. We can't throw away our traditional skills." Meg nodded. "So the taste of rum is so wonderful. This aroma and texture completely crushes those breweries in Chaos City. Master Old Sim really lives up to his name." Harrison's glass was already half full. His round body swayed a little as he squinted, and said, "But, isn't this rum a little too strong? Why do I feel that the glass in my hand has become too? Brother, we've just started. Why you can't collapse so quickly?" George said seriously as he held on to the pillar beside him. Chapter 1591. Rum was a liquor with a high alcohol content. Meg had drunk it before when he was at the Fog tribe. The 15-year-old rum had an alcohol content of about 50 to 60%. It was not something that beer with an alcohol content of 8 to 9% could compare to. And for people who were used to drinking fruit wine and beer, the most direct reaction when they suddenly drank alcohol with such a high alcohol content was that they would get drunk easily. Harrison and George had already realized that the power of this liquor was a little unusual, so they put the liquor aside and waited for the dishes to be served obediently. It was nothing to get drunk from good liquor, but it would be a pity to get drunk before they even tried the new dish, husband and wife long slice. They had to try the new dish. That was the consensus of the two of them. Your husband and wife long slice. Just then, Yebamiya walked over and placed a plate of the husband and wife long slice between them. Wow, such a bright color. Such a fragrant, spicy, and alluring aroma. It really makes me want to try it. Harrison stared at the husband and wife long slice with his eyes wide open. The beef and beef offal slices were stacked on top of each other, forming the shape of a volcano in the middle of the plate. There was even a spoonful of red chili oil on top of this volcano, making it look like an active volcano that was ready to erupt. Then, there was a sprinkle of cooked sesame seeds and crushed peanuts, and some tender green coriander. The bright and alluring color coupled with the spicy aroma made one salivate uncontrollably. I've waited for so many days for this dish, and I can finally eat it. Mr. Mac really whetted my appetite. George swallowed his saliva, and picked up a piece of beef with his chopsticks first. The thin beef was coated with a layer of translucent chili oil, and there were a few cooked sesame seeds and crushed peanuts on the surface. The aroma of the braised meat and chili oil wafted over slowly. It had already started to stir the taste buds before it entered the mouth. With a bite, the rich aroma of the chili oil and the spiciness bloomed on the tip of the tongue at the same time, and what followed was the rich braised meat aroma of the beef. The soft and smooth beef melted with a light bite. His taste buds started to tremble and go crazy uncontrollably as he welcomed the attack of this spicy aroma. Wow, George's fat couldn't help but tremble. That wonderful feeling felt as if lightning had struck his body, and his brain had been split open. He was going to heaven. Rip. His clothes were already trembling uncontrollably, and his fats were mercilessly ripped apart. I'm sorry, I really can't control myself. George adjusted his clothes shyly with an awkward smile. Is it that explosive? Harrison raised his comical short eyebrows, and also picked up a piece of tripe impatiently. He was an avid fan of hot pot tripe. If not for the fact that he wanted to try the new product, and had endured for these few days, he would definitely go and make a hot pot to reward himself. The tripe was cut into long strips, and after being braised, it was light yellow in color. There was a natural grid on the surface, and it was wrapped in a layer of bright red oil. It looked very delicate and attractive. In terms of appearance, the tripe and tripe were two completely different things. The tripe that was as thin as paper had the characteristics of being crispy, tender, and refreshing. However, was this rather complicated and thick tripe really as delicious as the judges said? Harrison couldn't help but have some doubts, but he still put the tripe into his mouth without hesitation. As soon as the tripe entered his mouth, his teeth began to clash with the tripe. The thick tripe was indeed not as crispy as the tripe. This tripe was a little chewy, but it wasn't hard to chew. With a little bit of force, it opened up, and the chewy texture gave one a different kind of interest. The fragrant red oil, cooked sesame seeds, and crushed peanuts began to bloom beautifully on the tip of the tongue, but they were more like a group of bands wearing bright red clothes, solemnly pushing out the tripe amidst the din of gongs and drums. The fragrance of the braising was so rich that it seemed to have seeped into every inch of the tripe, then fermented, brewed, and exploded again. The red oil, the braising, and the tripe's own fragrance fought on the tip of the tongue, and his taste buds had no time to respond at all. He could only sigh inwardly and then surrender. Spicy and refreshing. It's not inferior to the tripe, indeed lives up to its reputation. This tripe is really amazing. It's so delicious that it's irresistible. Harrison only felt that he had sobered up by about 50%. Apart from the spicy and refreshing taste, he couldn't help but pick up the wine glass beside him and take a big gulp. Good wine paired with good food made the feeling of pleasure go up another level. This is really the best dish to go with wine. Harrison praised. Isn't that so? With a different cooking method, Mr. Mac has opened up a new world for beef for me. George nodded in agreement. Small beads of sweat had already appeared on his forehead due to the spicy taste and the alcohol. It was more than refreshing to describe. After all, it was a highly anticipated new product, and there were many customers who ordered the husband and wife long slice tonight. Vivian and Luna sat in the corner with a spicy grilled fish in front of them and a serving of the husband and wife long slice that had just been served. Vivian, do you think this dish is really made with the lungs of a married couple? Luna looked at the big plate of red husband and wife long slice in front of her. This scary name made her think of some scary things. Vivian leaned forward slightly and waved at Luna as she whispered, "Come here. Let me tell you a little secret." "What is it?" Luna went up to her curiously. "My father said that there have been a lot of loving couples going missing in Chaos City recently. Moreover, every time their bodies are found, their lungs." Vivian had a creepy smile on her face. "Ah." Luna leaned back in shock and let out a soft cry. She looked at the husband and wife long slice in front of her in horror, which attracted the puzzled gazes of the customers sitting at the other tables. "Ha ha ha." Vivian laughed so hard that tears welled up in the corners of her eyes. She only stopped laughing after a long while, and said, "Their lungs are all intact." "Why, you rascal! You only know how to lie to me and scare me." Luna looked at Vivian angrily and helplessly. Then, she nodded apologetically to the people around her. "I didn't expect our teacher Luna to believe such a story." Vivian shrugged. She picked up a piece of beef scalp with her chopsticks eagerly, and said, "These are all made with beef and beef offal. Although it's called husband and wife lung slice, there isn't even beef lung in it. Mr. Mac's clickbait is getting worse and worse. So it's beef." Luna heaved a sigh of relief when she heard that. "Yes. Look at this. It's the beef scalp." Vivian placed the beef scalp against the light, and the light shone through the gelatinous beef scalp. The translucent beef scalp was covered with a layer of red oil, and it looked very tempting. She couldn't help but exclaim, "Mr. Mac is indeed worthy of his reputation. Even a piece of beef scalp can be made into a piece of art. I must find a man as outstanding as him in the future. If I can't find one, I will die alone." Chapter 1592. That won't be easy. Luna turned toward the kitchen with a smile. From where she was standing, she could see Meg's busy back through the kitchen's glass window. He was holding up a busy restaurant all by himself, yet he was still able to maintain a warm and gentle demeanor toward everyone. Furthermore, he was also very accomplished in mathematics. It would be very difficult to find another man like him in Chaos City. "What about you, Luna? I heard that your father is already urging you to go back to Rodu to get married. He's already looking for a lot of suitors for you." Vivian looked at Luna with a smile, and said, "Those guys have heard that our Luna is unparalleled in beauty, so they must be trying to marry you." "Of course not." Luna blushed, and shook her head as she said, "Grandpa rejected them on my behalf. I don't want to get married right now. The education reform is a long-term thing, and I don't want to be distracted by marriage. I can't guarantee that the person I'm going to marry will be able to support me." Vivian's smile faded, and she looked at Luna with pity in her eyes as she said, "You're right. Our teacher Luna is a very busy person. This semester is about to end, and many children will be able to start school in the next semester. You'll definitely be very busy during the 1-month break, so you have to take care of yourself." Luna had been working even harder ever since she set up the foundation. She had to buy things for the children, supervise the construction of the new teaching area, and take up almost all of her time. It was rare for her to have time to go out with Vivian, so she had lost even more weight. "It's all right. The school building is almost finished, and the things that we've bought and donated are all in place. We should be able to finish everything before the start of the next semester," Luna said with a smile. "If you ask me, a busy person like you should find a man who can take care of you and feed you well," Vivian said with a sigh. Vivian sighed with emotion. All of a sudden, she was taken aback as she turned her gaze toward the kitchen. "What are you looking at?" Luna waved a hand in front of her eyes. "The best candidate for your husband," Vivian said with a serious expression. Luna followed her gaze and happened to see Meg in the kitchen, who had turned around to grill beef kebabs. She blushed again and rebuked, "What are you talking about? I'm not talking nonsense. I'm serious." Vivian grabbed Luna's hand and leaned forward. She lowered her voice and said, "Listen to my analysis. Don't you want to find a man who can support your career? Didn't Mr. Mac support you first when you set up the charity foundation? And during this period of time, he has been constantly helping you and the foundation. You definitely don't want to have a child right now. That cute and obedient little Amy is the perfect solution to the problem of having a child. Don't you like her very much? Besides, Mr. Mac is a top-notch stay-at-home dad. Even if you have a child in the future, you don't have to worry at all. Just leave the child in his hands and you can do whatever you want. Of course, the most important thing is that you can eat the food he cooks every day. It's the dream of many women in Chaos City to be able to eat the food personally prepared by Mr. Mac every morning when they wake up. Then, I don't have to worry about your health. Given his personality of spoiling children, he must be a wife-spoiling maniac too. What I should worry about is whether you'll gain weight. See, after my analysis, Mr. Mac is super suitable for you, right? According to your analysis, all the ladies in Chaos City are lining up to marry Mr. Meg. Luna chuckled, but her face was still red. Although she tried hard to chase Vivian's words out of her mind, they kept circling in her mind like a curse. For so many years, other than her grandfather, no other man had supported her as much as he did. Even her father and those men who were pursuing her couldn't understand what she was doing for the children. They tried to persuade her not to continue filling this bottomless pit. But she was only doing what she could, and those children could only rely on her. She had to admit that Mr. Meg was indeed a very special person. But, was she really good enough for him? She might not even be able to take care of her own life, so how could she take on the responsibilities of a family and a mother? Vivian nodded matter-of-factly, and said, "Of course. Mr. Mac is young and promising, and has strong genes. He's good in the kitchen, elegant in his speech, gentle in his actions, and most importantly, he's quite handsome. He's a typical super high-quality, rich young man. If he puts up a marriage notice on the door, the line of people who want to go on a blind date will probably stretch all the way to the city gate." "Is that so?" Luna covered her mouth. She was shocked and a little disappointed. If that was the case, then it wouldn't even be her turn. Don't be discouraged. You have little Amy as your trump card. With your relationship with little Amy, and Mr. Mac's love for little Amy, your chances of getting married are very high. Vivian held Luna's hand and encouraged her. But for such a high-quality golden bachelor, you have to be more proactive. Otherwise, others might beat you to it. But you can't be too proactive. It doesn't match your temperament and profession. You have to establish the image of a noble female teacher and arouse the other party's desire to conquer. Then, you have to play hard to get. Wait, where did you learn all this from? Luna looked at Vivian suspiciously. She knew very well what her best friend had experienced in the past 18 years. She was definitely a single dog from her mother's womb, so why was she talking about these things now? Hee, it's just a book. There's everything in the book. Vivian smiled proudly. Okay, let's not talk about this anymore. Luna rolled her eyes and glanced at the grilled fish. Your grilled fish is going to burn if you don't eat it. Oh. I almost forgot about the important matter. Vivian was shocked. She quickly picked up her chopsticks and scratched the bottom of the grilled fish a few times to prevent the skin from being eaten by the abominable grilled fish. Then, she began to eat the grilled fish seriously. Luna ate a few mouthfuls of grilled fish and turned her head to look in the direction of the kitchen. Seeing the busy figure, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. She quickly withdrew her gaze and chatted with Vivian. As Mamie's first cold dish, the husband and wife long slice received unanimous praise from the customers. On the other hand, the rum made many guests drunk. Among them, there was no lack of 2 or 3 people who got drunk together, and there were also some who got drunk alone. Those who had a coachman with them were fine, but for those who didn't, Meg had to pry an address out of their vague mouths and call a carriage to send them away. Of course, many of them were sent to places like Wafting Fragrance Court. Of the 10 tables of female guests, 5 of them are discussing how to win your heart, and the other 5 are lamenting that they married too early. Your popularity among women is really amazing. Irina, who was wearing thin pajamas and holding a red wine glass, walked down the stairs gracefully. She looked at Meg, who had just closed the door, and said with a faint smile. Chapter 1593. The blood-like red wine swirled in the wine glass. Meg looked at Irina, who was walking down the stairs step by step. The thin white gauze pajamas gave off a hazy feeling. Although he couldn't see anything, it gave him the illusion that he could see everything. Her long silver hair was casually draped behind her back, and her jade-like feet were bare just like that. Every step she took, a piece of green leaf would appear under her feet, perfectly supporting her. That beautiful face, that beautiful smile on her lips, such a peerless beauty walking toward him, any man would probably go crazy for her. Meg was a man, but he couldn't really go crazy at this moment. Instead, he was a little flustered because of Irina's words. Customers will always have some unrealistic thoughts when they eat delicious food. Meg coughed dryly, and said seriously, "Am I a man that they can get?" Pfft, Irina couldn't help but laugh. Her usually cold face was like a blooming flower, and Meg was a little dazed. "What's wrong?" Irina looked at him. "Nothing, I just think that you look a little good when you smile." "A little?" "No. It's very good looking." "How good looking?" Irina stepped forward, and was almost right in front of Meg. The faint fragrance that greeted him was like the water of life, making him feel pleasant and comfortable. Meg looked at the person in front of him, and said with a smile, "The sun, the moon, and the stars are not enough to describe you. In my eyes, you are the most beautiful." Irina paused and looked into Meg's eyes. Her bright eyes were like stars, sincere and passionate. Although her expression was still calm, her heart started to beat faster uncontrollably. Meg also looked at Irina, who was so close to him. Her plump red lips were extremely alluring, and a strange impulse gradually rose in his heart. The alluring aroma of the red wine was gradually intoxicating, and the two of them slowly leaned forward. This kiss was passionate and long. "Rodu, the royal palace. Let's go and bring Vanessa back. There are too many uncertainties over there." "It's no longer safe," André said to Sean, who was half kneeling on the ground. "Yes." Sean got up, turned around, and then stopped. He turned back and said hesitantly, "Father, if I meet Alex on this trip, what should I do?" "Do you have the confidence to kill him?" André asked. "No." Sean shook his head. "He does. I understand." Sean nodded and turned to leave quickly. The Wind Forest, the Endless Sea Realm, the Twilight Forest. "Alex, you really are everywhere." André paced slowly in the palace with an inexplicable smile on his face. "It seems like you've been living well for the past 3 years. It's just that you've become more nosy." Not far away, the blue flames at the top of the magnificent Mage Tower were still burning fiercely. The Triennial Magic Caster Conference is about to begin. As usual, Crassus will come to open the conference. Should we invite him this year? Of course. He doesn't belong to the Mage Tower anymore. What's the point of inviting him? The Magic Caster Conference was proposed and established by Master Crassus. Over the years, many outstanding talents have been selected for the Magic Caster world. It has opened up a path for the poor magic casters, and greatly promoted the development of the Magic Caster world in the Roth Empire. We can all choose not to participate in the Magic Caster Conference, but we can't do without Master Crassus. Nonsense. I think you want to betray the Mage Tower too. That's why you keep speaking up for Crassus. Freedom of movement in the Mage Tower is one of the 10 principles. I've never seen anyone say that leaving the Mage Tower is a betrayal. If there's justice in your heart, you'll naturally know what Master Crassus has done for the Mage Tower. I'm not speaking up for him, but for justice. A roundtable conference was going on in the Mage Tower's conference hall. However, the conference had already gone on for several hours, and the debate was still ongoing. "That's enough," Richard, who was sitting in the main seat, said in a low voice. The voices in the conference hall gradually died down, and everyone turned to look at Richard. "I'll send an invitation to Crassus. As for whether he wants to come, that's up to him." Richard stood up and walked toward the door as he said, "That's all for today's conference. Dismissed." Brent followed behind Richard with furrowed brows, and asked, "Great Elder, are we really going to invite that old bastard Crassus?" The opening of the Magic Caster Conference by Crassus has always been a tradition. If we don't even send an invitation, it'll make us look petty. Richard walked as he said, "As for whether he'll come or not, with his personality, I'm afraid he won't come even if he finds a good disciple." Brent nodded with a thoughtful expression. Richard suddenly stopped in his tracks, and turned to Brent as he said, "By the way, His Majesty has decreed that 2 great magic casters from our Magus Tower will accompany the first prince to Chaos City. I plan to send you and Elliot, and we'll set off tomorrow morning. Go south with the first prince." Brent faltered upon hearing this. He looked around, and lowered his voice as he asked, "Does the second prince know about this?" Richard replied with a serious expression, "This is an order from His Majesty, so it doesn't matter whether Josh is aware of it or not. You're going to bring Princess Vanessa back to the palace, and ensure the safety of the princess and the first prince is your top priority. Princess Vanessa is in Chaos City." Brent was a little surprised, but he quickly composed himself at the sight of Richard's serious expression. He nodded with a serious expression and said, "All right, I'll be sure to complete the escort mission." What a dashing pair of lovebirds. One moment, they're in the Wind Forest, the next moment, they're in Chaos City, and the next moment, they're in the Twilight Forest. Ha! Ha ha ha. Josh sat in the pavilion at the center of the lake with a few unopened jugs of wine in his hands. The ground was littered with shattered porcelain, and he was looking at the lake with a slightly intoxicated expression on his face. In the corner of the pavilion, the 2 maids who were in charge of brewing the wine were leaning against each other, trembling in fear. They didn't dare to look Josh in the eye. The second prince was simply too terrifying in this state. A black shadow guard appeared in the pavilion at the center of the lake, and half knelt on the ground as he respectfully said, "Your Highness, a guest from the Twilight Forest has arrived. He said that he brought you something precious." "An orc from the Twilight Forest?" Josh frowned as he looked at that shadow guard, and asked, "What is it?" The shadow guard lowered his head, and said, "He doesn't want us to see it. He said that he can only give it to you." Ha! Interesting. An interested smile appeared on Josh's face. He waved his hand, and said, "The 2 of you are dismissed. Bring that fellow here." That shadow guard hesitated, and said, "Your Highness, that orc is a little strange. Do you need me to make some preparations? This is Rodu, the second prince's residence. Is there anyone who dares to do anything to me here?" Josh smiled with disdain, and waved his hand. "Bring him here." Soon, a skinny orc with leopard prints on his face was brought to the pavilion at the center of the lake. He was holding a black stone box in his hands. He bowed slightly to Josh, and said in a hoarse voice, "Morris greets Your Highness." "What are you holding in your hands?" Josh asked as he looked at the stone box in the orc's hands with interest. "This item is extremely precious. It is not suitable for a third party to know about it." Morris didn't reveal it directly. Instead, he glanced at the shadow guard standing at the side. "Dismissed." Josh waved his hand. That shadow guard hesitated for a moment, but still chose to disappear from the pavilion at the center of the lake. "Tell me, what is that?" "Your Highness, have you heard of the massacre that happened in the Urba tribe 300 years ago?" A hoarse voice sounded in the pavilion at the center of the lake. No pop-up window. Chapter 1594. On the dragon island that was suspended in the air. In the majestic golden palace, the 10 giant dragons each stood in one direction, and the atmosphere in the hall was rather tense. The giant dragons that represented the top 10 giant dragon tribes, the top 10 giant dragon powerhouses that stood at the top of this world, were gathered in one hall at the moment. Is the news from the Twilight Forest reliable? Do devils really exist in this world? Lorenzo, the chief of the Flaming Dragon tribe, asked loudly. His tone was filled with disbelief. Irina used the holy light to kill the evil that possessed Isaiah's son, and purified him into nothingness together with him. That was the scene that everyone at the scene saw. There were many doubts about the massacre of the Urba tribe back then, and we also found the aura of evil from the traces left behind at the scene. That was why we didn't execute Rex, and instead locked him up in the Bowtie prison. If what Rex said was true, the devil's tentacles would have already extended to this world, and we know nothing about them. Douglas's cold voice sounded, and the hot air became much colder. We giant dragons are the most powerful race in this world. We were born to be the kings of the sky. Even if devils really exist, what's there to be afraid of? Eustace, the great elder of the Amethyst Dragon tribe, who was covered in light purple amethyst scales, said with disdain. Isn't it too ridiculous to gather the top 10 giant dragon tribes together for such a small matter? I still have an appointment with the Titan King for a fight. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. Isaiah, the chief of the Tyrant Dragon tribe, stood up suddenly, and turned to walk out of the hall. If devils really exist in this world, I'm afraid this matter isn't as simple as we think. Right then, the chief of the Golden Dragon tribe, who had been silent all this while, said, I found a giant mural in the forbidden tomb of the Golden Dragon Island. It was left behind by our ancestors. All these years, I never understood what it was trying to express, but I should bring you all to see it today. A mural left behind by our ancestors? All the giant dragons were surprised to hear that. Even Lewis, who was about to reach the door, stopped in his tracks. Dragons had a long lifespan, so they did not need to rely on words or murals to leave any traces. There was enough time for them to pass down their legacies orally. However, the Golden Dragon Island, which was the birthplace of the dragon race, actually had murals left behind by their ancestors. Moreover, even Lewis, who was the oldest and most knowledgeable among the dragons, couldn't understand it. That piqued the interest of the other WIRMS. Let's go. Lewis got up, flapped his wings, and disappeared from the hall. The other dragons left as well. After a while, the dragons appeared in a dark and huge cave. A huge mural that was 1,000 meters long and over 500 meters wide appeared in front of them. This was a grand project that only a dragon could accomplish. Even the leaders of the giant dragon tribe were surprised to see such a huge mural under the ground. I didn't expect there to be such a mural under the Golden Dragon tribe. But what is it about? Loren opened his mouth and spat out a string of fireballs. The fireballs flew out and hovered in front of the mural about 100 meters away. The panoramic view of this magnificent mural hidden deep underground was truly displayed in front of everyone. It was chaos. What entered everyone's eyes was only a scene of chaos. This was a complete painting. There were countless races on it, as well as countless strange scenes. WIRMS were biting and killing each other. Forest trolls were twisting off the heads of their companions with half an elf in their mouths. Goblins with red eyes were riding on orcs and chasing after a group of monkeys. The endless sea realm was dyed red with blood. Countless corpses of demons were floating on the surface of the sea, and they were being torn apart and eaten by a group of terrifying fish. There were also many races that they had never seen before that were killing each other and slaughtering other races, and in the center of the mural, there was an indescribable object that was as huge as a small mountain. The WIRMS were as tiny as mosquitoes in front of it. Countless tentacles reached out from the hexagonal seal above its head. Those tentacles were filled with red eyes that flickered with a demonic glow as if they were about to break out of the seal. The expressions of all the dragon bigwigs changed when they saw this scene. What? What is this thing? Lauren, who was standing in front of that indescribable object, took a step back instinctively. The strange yet impactful scene left all the giant dragons in awe. If there are unknown and terrifying demons in this world, this might be it, Lewis said calmly. Lewis stepped forward, and said in a steady voice, "This mural dates back to a much earlier time than the records and inheritance of our giant dragon tribe. Furthermore, this time period has to be counted in the tens of thousands of years. However, in the inheritance of our giant dragon tribe, there is nothing about this mural at all. Hence, I once thought that this was the imagination of one of our ancestors. Various races are at war with each other, and even killing each other. Could this really be a record of a race war in ancient times?" Eustace asked with a frown. "No, this is more like the scene that Rex described when the Urba tribe was controlled by the demons and killed each other," Douglas said solemnly. Douglas looked at the mural with a solemn expression, and solemnly said, "Racial wars are not like this. WIRMS would not attack their own kind in such a frenzy. No race would attack their own kind in such a frenzy, let alone the elves. Isn't this just a mural? Why are you so nervous?" Isaiah pursed his lips and smilingly said, "Perhaps one of our ancestors had nothing better to do, so he deliberately painted this to scare us." "No, I think Douglas is right. This mural should be a warning left behind by our ancestors. 3 years ago, there was an anomaly underground. That's when I discovered this hidden crypt and the only mural in the crypt. In just 3 years, a suspected demon appeared in the Twilight Forest. There must be an inseparable relationship between the two." Lewis walked forward, and his golden eyes stared at the indescribable object that had a huge octopus head, a human body, and huge wings. This fellow was probably sealed somewhere by our ancestors back then. Now, it has begun to extend its tentacles and affect our world again. How is that possible? You said that this mural has existed for tens of thousands of years. What can live for so long? Even us WIRMS can only live for 3,000 years, Lorenzo questioned. Look at the words in the corner. Lewis's golden eyes landed on the corner. There was a line of words written in the ancient WIRMS language. Eternal slumber may not be death. Lauren read in a trembling voice. Chapter 1595. Meg had a good dream. Everything was possible in the dream. Then, the alarm went off. Meg reached out to turn off the alarm and looked at the beauty sleeping in the crook of his arm. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Humph, I knew it. Father must be hugging Mother to sleep instead of hugging Xiaomi to sleep. A soft voice came from beside the bed. Meg turned around stiffly and saw Amy standing beside the bed with her arms crossed and an aggrieved look on her face. He smiled awkwardly and said, "Amy, listen to me. Last night, we both drank too much, and then, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Anyway. If I don't get 2 strawberry ice creams, I won't be happy." Amy turned her face away and said proudly, "Oh. In order to compensate my little princess, I can only make a delicious breakfast for her." Meg gently pulled his slightly numb hand away and got out of bed. He tucked in the corner of the blanket and picked up a clean chef's suit. He squatted down and pinched Amy's nose and said with a smile, "Come, give Father a kiss. If you kiss me, you have to add an ice cream." Amy stole a glance at Meg and said proudly, "Okay, I'll add it for you, but you can only have ice cream in the afternoon and evening." Meg smiled and nodded. Mua, Amy hugged Meg's neck and kissed his cheek. She said happily, 3 ice creams. Okay, 3. You can have any flavor you want. Meg smiled contentedly and rubbed Amy's head. He got up and walked out of the door to change in the bathroom. Last night, perhaps they had underestimated the strength of the rum and red wine, so they were all drunk. Then, probably nothing happened. Although they were lying on the same bed, their clothes were not disheveled. However, he didn't know how he changed into his pajamas. Drinking messes up things. Drinking messes up things. Meg muttered regretfully as he brushed his teeth. Mother, are you awake? Amy asked softly as she lay on the edge of the bed and looked at Irina, who was sleeping like a beauty. Irina opened her eyes and looked at Amy with her clear blue eyes. She smiled and said, Amy, how did you know I was awake? I just saw you smile. Amy said with a smile. She took off her shoes and snuggled into Irina's arms. She closed her eyes comfortably and said, I've chased father away, so this place belongs to me now. I want to go back to sleep. Irina wrapped her arms around Amy and smiled even more affectionately. However, she still smiled and said, Don't you like your father more? Who said so? I like both of them very much. Amy shook her head and then reached out to touch Irina's belly. She said expectantly, Will you give birth to a little sister for me to play with? A little sister. Irina's body stiffened slightly and she said with a strange expression, Do you want a little sister, Irina? Yes, I like little sisters very much. Amy nodded and said regretfully, Palmer's little sister, Chris, is super cute, but she's someone else's little sister. It's not very convenient to play with her. How can you say play with her? You should say play with her. Irina couldn't help but laugh. If having a little sister isn't for playing with her, then what's the point? Amy was puzzled. Irina thought for a moment. She seemed to have said something similar when she was pregnant with Amy. Why does this sound so familiar? For example, we can dress her up as a beautiful little princess, bring her to beat up bad guys, teach her how to play with fire. In any case, if we have a little sister, it'll definitely be super fun. Amy looked at Irina expectantly. Looking at the little girl's expectant expression and pure gaze, Irina found it difficult to refuse. However, that guy was really a blockhead. He really got her drunk last night. Even if she wanted to give birth to a little sister for Amy, it wasn't something she could do alone. Moreover, with so many things happening now, enemies all over the world, and the evil god watching them closely, she didn't dare to let herself fall into a weakened state again after being pregnant for 3 years. If Amy wants a little sister, then you'll have to wait a little longer. When mother's belly gets bigger, you'll have a little sister, Irina said with a smile as she looked at Amy. Your belly is getting bigger. Amy touched Irina's flat belly, leaned forward, and whispered, Little sister, grow up quickly. Big sister is waiting for you outside. Gurgle, hey. Mother, listen. She's responding to me. Amy's eyes lit up as she exclaimed in surprise. Ah. Yes, at the crack of dawn, there was already a long line in front of Amy's. Most of them were middle-aged men. Drinking is the hobby of many men. Some people can exchange drinks in high-end restaurants, while others can gather together and drink at a table with wine from a small winery. With a bit of drunkenness, the world will become gentler and cuter, a drunk middle-aged man said confidently. That's enough. Madam said that if you don't go back today, you don't have to go back in the future, a waiter beside him said helplessly as he supported his swaying body. This woman, who is she trying to scare? Who's the head of the house? I'm a man, Master, Madam is the head of the house, the waiter reminded him. I'll go back now. That man flung the waiter's hand away, and walked towards the horse-drawn carriage with light steps. After taking a few quick steps, he turned back to look at his companion, and said, "Hey, help me taste if it's really Master Old Sim's handiwork. Ask the boss to leave me a bottle. Alright, you'd better go back quickly. Otherwise, you won't even have money for your alcohol next time." His companion chuckled as he watched him leave. He leisurely said, "If it's really Master Old Sim's handiwork, why would he leave it for you, 15 years old? Old Sim's rum. 1,000 copper coins for a glass." This news exploded in the small circle of Chaos City's rum drinkers last night. Those who knew what it meant would naturally know what it meant. Someone was using an extremely precious work of art to do charity by the roadside. Rum that was more than 15 years old was only supplied to the chief and a few nobles in the Falk tribe. It was very rare for it to flow out, and the probability of it flowing to Chaos City was even lower. But this time, someone was actually selling 15-year-old rum brewed by Master Old Sim in the restaurant, and it was acknowledged by a few rather famous drinkers in the circle. That was why there were these middle-aged men lining up at the restaurant's entrance early in the morning. "I heard this Mamie's has a lot of rules. They only sell breakfast in the morning. I wonder if we can get the rum this morning. We've been lining up for so long. How can he not sell it when he's running a business? Isn't he ruining his own reputation? Yes, 15-year-old rum. Maybe there won't be any left the next time we come. We have to get him to sell us a glass this morning no matter what." Everyone was discussing fervently at the restaurant's entrance. Chapter 1596. Why are there so many people so early in the morning? And there are so many bottles and cans in their hands. Are they here to cause trouble? Hannah followed Mia and the rest to the restaurant early in the morning. She was shocked to see the long line at the entrance and those men holding all kinds of containers in their hands. Yeah, they are all unfamiliar faces. Usually, if they are not regulars, they wouldn't line up so early for breakfast. Mia was also puzzled when she saw this scene. Elizabeth frowned slightly. She glanced at the bottles and cans in their hands, and coldly said, "Judging from the smell of alcohol on them, they should be here for the rum." Seems like the reputation of Hannah's rum has already spread. "It's true that good wine fears no dark alleys," Mia said with a smile. Hannah was a little smug when she heard that. It seemed like rum did have a huge audience in Chaos City. However, she soon worriedly said, "But, didn't the boss say that they don't sell alcohol in the morning?" "Then they..." "Yeah. Alcohol is not sold in the morning." Yabamiya nodded, and quickly walked to the stairs at the entrance of the restaurant. She looked at the people in the line, and smilingly said, "Hello, I am a service staff member at Mamie's. I would like to kindly remind the customers who are here for the first time that Mamie's only provides fried dough sticks, soy milk, Yangzhou fried rice, and other breakfast items during its morning operating hours. Alcohol, spicy grilled fish, roast beef kebabs, and other food items are not available. Please be aware. They don't sell alcohol in the morning." The customers who were waiting for the restaurant to open to buy alcohol were in an uproar when they heard that. Most of them were here for the first time at Mamie's. They had heard of this restaurant before, and only knew that there were many rules and queues, but they didn't expect that the menu would change for 3 meals a day. An old man went up to Yabamiya, and earnestly said, "Miss, many of us are here for the first time, and don't know the restaurant's rules. We came here for the rum this morning, and have been standing in the cold wind for almost an hour. Why don't you make an exception for us and let us have a drink?" "That's right. We came here this morning to drink rum, but now you're telling us that it's not for sale. Aren't you playing with us?" A fat and strong man who reeked of alcohol said impatiently. "That's right, sell us a cup. If it wasn't for this glass of wine, who would be willing to line up so early in the morning?" A skinny monkey-like man stomped his feet, sniffing his red nose as he complained, "Also, since you're all here, quickly open the door and let us in. How can you do business like this?" The crowd pushed and shoved each other forward, as if they were about to rush into the shop. Rules are meant to be obeyed. A cold voice sounded out, and the ground was instantly covered in frost. The already cold weather instantly dropped by a lot, making everyone feel as if they had fallen into an ice cave. What surprised everyone even more was that their feet were firmly stuck to the ground by the frost, unable to take even half a step forward. Everyone looked at the frosty beauty walking up the stairs and looking at them coldly. They subconsciously wanted to avoid her gaze, not daring to meet her eyes. No matter who you are, or what reason you have to abide by the rules of Mamie's here. Otherwise, you will be blacklisted and will no longer be allowed to enter the restaurant. Elizabeth's gaze swept across the faces of the customers, and said in a cold voice, "If there is anyone who forcefully violates the rules, you will be seen as an enemy of the restaurant." Everyone subconsciously swallowed their saliva. Although this frosty beauty was beautiful, her aura was equally strong and terrifying. She should be a powerful ice magician. Some people who were still hungover were frozen by the frost. They shivered and immediately sobered up. Everyone realized one thing. This shop was different from those restaurants that worshipped them like gods. Their usual sense of superiority would not work here. Wow, big sister Elizabeth is so cool. Hannah looked at Elizabeth with sparkling eyes. As a weak orc, she envied this kind of powerful big sister the most. She could suppress those troublemakers by herself. She was not afraid of anyone at all. "It's so cold, and we can't drink any alcohol. How tiring is it to line up? There's still more than half an hour before the restaurant opens. Why don't we go home and hug our wives to sleep on a hot brick bed?" Harrison reminded from behind as he rubbed his hands. "Yes, let's go home. It's too cold." Everyone immediately found a way out after hearing that. More than half of the customers carrying bottles and jars left immediately. The long line in front of the restaurant was more than halved. "Bye-bye, all of you." Harrison smiled as he walked to the front row. He had come early in the morning to eat soy milk and youtiao, but he did not expect to see such a group of drunkards in front of him. If they did not leave, who knew how long they would have to wait in line? The regulars who came for breakfast also took their places one by one. The originally tense atmosphere quickly became relaxed. Many customers even greeted Yabamiya and the rest. Elizabeth waved her hand, and the frost on the ground disappeared instantly. The air also returned to normal. Although it did not become warmer, at least the area did not become colder. Yabamiya nodded at everyone with a smile. She knocked on the door, and the door opened. Everyone went in. Miss Elizabeth's aura is really strong. Even if we come to the restaurant every day, we still don't dare to greet her. This kind of ice beauty can only be admired from afar. Don't even think about getting close to her. If not for this, she wouldn't be able to suppress those drunkards who don't know who they are after drinking. The customers laughed as they discussed, and the atmosphere gradually became lively. It was definitely true love to wake up early and line up outside the restaurant for breakfast on a winter day like this. Meg walked out of the kitchen with a tray, and smiled as he saw Mia and the rest enter, and said, "It's quite lively so early in the morning. Hannah's rum is too popular." Many customers came because they heard about it, but they didn't know the restaurant's rules, so they made a small commotion. However, they were very cooperative and left first, Mia said with a smile. "I didn't expect there to be so many people who like to drink rum in Chaos City," Hannah said with a surprised expression. "That's because the local rum in Chaos City is too lousy, and the rum you brewed is the best in the rum. This is the so-called dimensionality reduction. This situation will probably continue to ferment," Meg said without any surprise. Some customers who didn't know about rum before would mostly fall into the trap after tasting it. Then, they would bring more of their friends to join the trap, and spread like a virus on the tables. They relied on the quality of all the other rum in the market and the excellent reputation to establish a foothold in Chaos City very quickly. "We have to hurry up with the matters regarding the brewery," Meg said to Hannah with a smile. Chapter 1597. After the morning service, Meg took Hannah upstairs and began the formal drawing lesson. As a pseudo-designer who had graduated from a proper mechanical design major, Meg's foundation in design was very solid. With his good memory, he could still remember how his teacher had taught him the basics of drawing designs. So many books. When Hannah entered the study, she was attracted by the 3 walls that were almost filled with all kinds of books. At a rough glance, there were at least 5,000 books of all kinds. She had never seen so many books in her life. Meg pointed at the bookshelf near the door with a smile, and said, "Apart from this bookshelf, you can take whatever books you want to read on the other bookshelves." Reading more books was a good thing. Hannah glanced at the bookshelf that Meg was pointing at. There were many books with black and red covers on the bookshelf, and they seemed to be emitting some kind of dark aura. She nodded without thinking too much about it. "Come over here. Today, I'm going to teach you how to draw a design in a standard manner so that your design can be gradually presented on the drawing so that more professional craftsmen can create products that meet your requirements." Meg walked over to the desk by the window. "Aren't we going to do it ourselves?" Hannah followed and asked with some doubts. She felt that others might not understand what she was going to do. "Our goal is to make standardized brewing equipment. Except for the mixing, which is done by you, the other processes can be done by machines and standardized workers. Only in this way can it be considered a large-scale mechanized brewery." Meg took a piece of white paper from the shelf and put it on the desk. He looked at Hannah and said, "So, we have to ensure the precision of the machine. This is a job that can only be done by professional blacksmiths." "Oh." Hannah nodded thoughtfully and looked at Meg with some worry. "Will it be difficult?" "In the past, I used to draw whatever I wanted. As long as I could understand it, it would be fine. It doesn't matter. I am a professional." Meg gestured for Hannah to sit at the side with a profound expression before he sat down in front of the desk, and said, "Let's take a look at the tools that are commonly used for drawing. This is a pencil and eraser, and this is a ruler." Meg began to teach Hannah the steps and methods of standardized drawing in an in-depth and simplified manner, starting from knowing the tools. Planar plan, 3D plan, 3D plan, one after another unfamiliar words leaped into Hannah's mind. Looking at the vivid drawings under Meg's pen and the neat and comfortable labeling method, she felt as if she had opened the door to a new world. The boss was indeed a master mechanic. However, Meg spoke too quickly, and the amount of information was too much. Although she had already tried her best to memorize it, and even took out a small notebook to record some key points, it was obviously unrealistic to want to completely grasp these things in a short period of time. She could only slowly digest and practice it when she was alone. About an hour later, Meg picked up the teacup beside him and took a sip of tea to moisten his dry throat. He looked at Hannah, who was in a daze, and asked, "Can you do it now?" Hannah looked at Meg in a daze. Is this a human language? Although she understood everything Meg said, this and understanding were two different things. It's okay. As a professional teacher, I'll point out where I don't know. Meg smiled and extended his middle finger. Moments later, the dazed Hannah regained her clarity. She looked at Meg, who was sitting opposite her, in disbelief, and said in surprise, "Boss. I know it all." "No, it's just that your brain has already grasped it. Drawing is something that requires constant practice. You can stay in the study today and draw all the drawings that I've prepared for you. Meg stood up and gave his seat to Hannah before he went downstairs. Isn't this too miraculous? The boss just pointed at my forehead, and I actually learned everything that he taught this morning. This is too incredible. Hannah still couldn't calm down. Just now, she actually learned everything that Meg taught her in her mind in a short period of time, including how to use various tools, how to draw professional drawings, and how to mark the appropriate measurements. Could this be the boss's superpower? Hannah was in deep thought. She felt that she had discovered the boss's superpower outside of cooking. Calm down, calm down. It's time to start drawing. Hannah took a deep breath and tried to calm herself down. Then, she picked up the pen and paper and started to complete the task that Meg gave her. Although it was her first time using professional tools to draw, she had already memorized all the methods and steps in her mind. Her technique was a bit rough, but it didn't affect her drawing the lines and drawings on the paper. Not bad, but it's not professional enough. 10 minutes later, Hannah looked at the first drawing she drew and nodded in satisfaction. Then, she threw it aside in dissatisfaction. She took the second piece of paper and started drawing seriously again. Not long after Meg went downstairs, Dykes came to find him with Michael's order to go to the city lord's castle. Meg could roughly guess why Michael was looking for him. He changed his clothes and put the stone box with the strange stone statue in it on his body. Then, he got into Dykes' carriage and headed to the city lord's castle. As soon as Meg arrived at the secret room, Michael stood up and said sincerely, "Mr. Mac, I have to apologize to you about Miss Raina first. This matter will be completely resolved in a few days. There are some parasites in the city lord's castle. I need to clean them up carefully. I'm not the one who was hurt. Your apology won't help." Meg shrugged. He was indeed a bit unhappy about the city lord's castle. "I'll personally apologize to Miss Raina later." Michael nodded. "Let's put these things aside for now. Let's talk about the evil gods and devils first," Roland said in a low voice as he closed the secret room's door and activated multiple anti-spying spell formations. "Mr. Mac, did you really see the devils on your trip to the Falk tribe this time?" Michael asked Meg. "I believe the city lord has already seen the detailed report and my previous conversation. Perhaps it's a little ridiculous, but we have to admit that there really are devils in this world. Or rather, it's a kind of powerful existence that existed in ancient times but has survived until now. I call them the Great Old Ones," Meg said in a low voice. "Great Old Ones." Michael repeated each word slowly. His brows were tightly knitted together as he perplexedly asked, "If there really are Great Old Ones, why haven't there been any records of them in the history of the Norland continent?" Meg thought for a while, and said, "I've been thinking about this problem recently. There are two possibilities. One, the Norland continent was once completely destroyed, and the current world slowly developed after that, so there are no relevant records. Two, the Norland continent's history has been altered by someone, and all the information related to the Great Old Ones has been erased." Chapter 1598. The secret chamber suddenly became quiet. Michael and Roland were deep in thought. Meg didn't say anything either. He might know a little more than the two of them, but he still couldn't be sure if his judgment was correct. If it's the former, then the previous world was completely destroyed under the scourge of the Great Old Ones. There was a very long gap in the world's civilization, and then it took a long time to develop to what it is now. Michael frowned, and said, "But, can those fellows really live for so long? If their strength is already strong enough to destroy the world, I don't think it's hard to understand how they can live through this long period of time in some way." Meg calmly said, "Moreover, the various races are like leeks to them. They cut them up again and again." That's true." Michael opened his mouth, but he was actually speechless. If there's a complete gap in the inheritance, then who did this? If it's the ancestors of the various races, knowing that there are terrifying demons, shouldn't they warn their descendants? Roland raised his own doubts. The giant dragons believe in the dragon god, the demons believe in their own demon gods, the orcs believe in the beast god, and the elves believe in the god of life. Almost all the races have their own gods, forming a strong belief system. Let's assume that the strength of these gods is determined by their belief. The great old ones became strong by controlling the various races to believe in them, and the evil gods have very powerful means to bewitch people. They can easily corrupt and control those who have flaws in their minds. The best way to rid the Norland continent of the great old ones is not to let everyone be on guard against them, but to completely forget them, and then cut off the connection with them. Therefore, the gods of the various races might have wiped out all the records and memories related to them on the Norland continent after sealing the great old ones. Meg frowned slightly, and said, "These are all my deductions. Most of the gods of the various races only exist in legends. Although they can receive some supernatural gifts, I can't make a definite judgment as to whether they are really gifts from the gods." Michael shook his head, thought for a while, and said, "As for the power of faith, if the gods really exist, then perhaps they really do exist. Otherwise, there wouldn't be the phenomenon of all races worshipping gods." Of these two inferences, if it's the latter, at least each race still has the protection of the gods. But if it's the former, how should we deal with the great old ones who have already begun to stir? "That's the most difficult thing," Roland said with a frown. "Regardless of which one it is, the most important thing for us to do now is to immediately end the possible struggle between the various races, alert the entire continent of the Black Fog's appearance, and find a way to completely kill the Great Apocalypse Dominator, or impose a more complicated and sturdy seal on it," Meg said with a serious expression. Michael and Lauren both nodded. Just as Meg said, this was what they could do for now. "This is the stone statue that Lex gave me. It was obtained from the Urba tribe back then. It should be the evil god that the Urba tribe worshipped back then." Meg took out the stone statue from the stone box and placed it on the table. Why would this thing that is so ugly and disgusting become the Urba tribe's totem of faith? Michael glanced at the stone statue, and only felt a tinge of frustration rising in his heart. He quickly averted his gaze. That's exactly why it's so strange. If the tragedy of the Urba tribe spreads to the entire Norland continent, then it will definitely be a tragedy in the human world. Meg kept the stone statue. Its appearance made the secret chamber become cold and eerie. The Great Temple will raise the investigation of the Black Fog and the Great Old Ones to the highest level of authority. "We will do our best to investigate and monitor it," Lauren said with a deep voice. Michael also said, "The City Lord's castle will try to establish contact with all the races, and communicate with all the races about this matter. Before we have concrete evidence, I'm afraid it will be very difficult to completely stop the signs of struggle between the various races." "All right, I will continue to pay attention to this matter too. If I think of anything, I will contact you in time." Meg nodded. The three of them had a short discussion about the Black Fog and the Great Old Ones. However, they had too little information at the moment, so it was difficult for them to come up with anything substantial. However, the three of them still came to a consensus. They had to come up with convincing evidence before the peace talks between all the races so that all the races could gather together to fight against the common enemy that might appear. "Mr. Mack, I heard you abducted the best brewer in the Falk tribe." Michael asked Meg with a smile after they left the secret chamber. "I didn't abduct her. She did it willingly." Meg smiled at Lauren. "Speaking of which, she's also an informant of the Grey Temple. However, given her abilities, it would be a waste for her to stay in the Falk tribe for the rest of her life. Hence, I asked for someone from Your Excellency Lauren. Old Sim is the Grey Temple's best informant in the Falk tribe." Mr. Mack made the Grey Temple suffer quite a loss. Lauren also had a smile on his face. Meg bade farewell, and Dicus personally sent him back to the restaurant. Michael lowered his voice as he looked at Lauren and asked, "The investigation from the Department of Property Rights. It's basically over. Judging from the results, you'll have to hire a lot of people again." Lauren took out a piece of parchment and handed it over. Michael unfolded the parchment and looked at it seriously for a while. His face darkened, and he only put it down after a while. He angrily said, "These fellows are really greedy. They really think they're officials just because they have some power in their hands. They made the Department of Property Rights into such a mess right under my nose. These can be found out through investigation. As for the more well-hidden transactions, the Grey Temple can also dig them out if there's a need." Lauren appeared rather calm. "It's not just the Department of Property Rights. The Marquis family has really spent a lot of money and effort to operate it all these years. They must have treated the City Lord's castle as their own. They can produce whatever evidence they want," Michael said with a frown. Because of Bennett, many of the Marquis family's businesses have started to drift between the black and white sides. If there's a need to clean them up, we can hurt them anytime. Then do a proper investigation. If we don't let Bowen suffer, he might forget who he is, Michael said with a cold expression. The warehouse happened to be a little empty recently. Developing steam locomotives is a very expensive thing. I'll get them to start an investigation on the Marquis family when we get back." Lauren nodded slightly. "Minister, are you satisfied with the beauties that I sent to your house last night?" Bowen asked with a smile as he looked at the middle-aged man who was surrounded by two beauties in a luxurious private room. They taught me well." The middle-aged man nodded with satisfaction. His hands moved restlessly up and down the two beauties in his arms. Bowen smirked. He looked at the man and continued, "Then, the final verdict on Bennett's properties and businesses, I'll give you the approval tomorrow." The middle-aged man waved his hand, and his gaze landed on Bowen. He narrowed his eyes, and smiled. "Same old rules. You get 70%, and I get 30%. Chapter 1599. "Father, what's Sir Dominic's attitude?" Jonah asked Bowen, who was sitting opposite him in the horse-drawn carriage. "Ha! That old thing. As long as there are women and money, there's nothing he can't handle." Bowen pursed his lips in disdain. "But he asked for 30% in cash. We have to calculate the value of these properties when we get back, and then prepare the money. We'll go to the Department of Property Rights tomorrow morning to hand in the money and get the ruling. We've estimated the value of these properties to be around 1 billion copper coins." "Sir Dominic is asking for too much this time," Jonah said with a frown. "Bennett's matter is a little complicated. If we're not careful, we might be implicated. If we follow the legal procedures flawlessly, these properties will naturally belong to us." Bowen smiled and said to Jonah, "This is called spending money to avoid disaster. It's unavoidable. Besides, with this money, that old thing Dominic will be in the same boat as us. Even if something happens in the future, he will have to help us." Jonah nodded thoughtfully. Sir Dominic was a high-ranking official in the City Lord's castle, and he was directly in charge of property rights. With his endorsement, this matter would definitely be settled. Although they had to fork out an extra 300 million copper coins, the 700 million copper coins would definitely land in their pockets. No wonder Father was so calm earlier. "Father, what about that hot pot restaurant?" Jonah asked. "Of course, it's still within the scope of recovery. Dominic can get 8 million copper coins from there. He's not someone who would let the meat in his mouth fly away," Bowen said with a smile. Jonah hesitated and said, "But Father, that hot pot restaurant might be related to the Grey Temple. I think it's safer not to claim the ownership of the hot pot restaurant for the time being. We'll wait until Bennett's matter is settled, and all the charges are cleared, and we figure out how Miss Reyna got that hot pot restaurant before we make a decision. Jonah, if you want to be the head of the family, you have to be bold enough. Bowen looked at Jonah and seriously said, the Department of Property Rights is in charge of property rights. What right does the Grey Temple have to interfere? If you're hesitant about something that's in the bag, how can you be the head of a big family? Yes, Jonah replied with his head lowered. Although there were still doubts in his eyes, he didn't continue arguing. In Chaos City, the City Lord's castle was in charge of government affairs, while the Grey Temple was in charge of punishment and defense. Under normal circumstances, the Grey Temple would indeed not interfere in government affairs. However, he was still a little worried. He couldn't help but think of the boss of Amy's. He felt that the matter wouldn't be resolved so easily. Rodu, the flying steed landing pad outside the royal palace. Sean stood in front of a majestic giant golden eagle, and looked at the dozens of people who came with him. He loudly said, "This time, I'm visiting Chaos City on behalf of the Empire. I hope we can complete the mission that His Majesty has given us." Half of these people were from the military, and there were even 2 10th-tier generals among them. The other half were civil officials who were responsible for the negotiations, and there were also 8 magic casters from the Magus Tower led by Brent and Elliot. Sean was also a little perplexed as to why his father would arrange for 2 great magic casters to accompany him on this trip. After all, Josh had been in the Magus Tower for many years, yet he was now bringing 2 great magic casters to Chaos City. However, this was not a bad thing for him. The one who should be having a headache was Joshua. Everyone smiled and complimented Sean before boarding the giant golden eagles and flying to Chaos City. It was a tradition for different races and regions to visit each other. Other than a few races that couldn't get along with each other completely, all the other races would still visit each other to maintain their basic friendship. However, there had never been such a big entourage like this in the past. The first prince was leading the team personally, and there were 2 10th-tier knights and 2 10th-tier magic casters. It was really rare. Everyone could vaguely guess. After all, Alex had been appearing in Chaos City recently, and his relationship with the Empire was a little unpredictable. In order to protect the first prince, it was reasonable for them to be on the safe side. Today, the Roth Empire's diplomatic team will officially visit our Chaos City. The first prince of the Roth Empire will be leading the team, and there will also be 2 10th-tier knights and 2 great magic casters accompanying them. This is the highest level of diplomatic team in the past 10 years. We have to do a good job of receiving them and show Chaos City's style. Chaos City's Foreign Affairs Department had already started the preparations for the reception. They still had to coordinate the City Lord's itinerary so that the Roth Empire's diplomatic team could meet the City Lord at the right time. Andre's diplomatic team this time is a little unusual. Seems like he's still a little worried that Alex will do something to Sean, Michael said with a smile as he looked at the report sent by Dykes. Princess Vanessa and Duke Abraham are also in Chaos City. Apart from a routine visit, the Roth Empire's diplomatic team also has another purpose, which is to bring Princess Vanessa back. This princess is deeply doted on by King Andre. I'm afraid it has something to do with the fact that he sent 2 great magic casters, Dykes replied with a smile. Speaking of which, my Princess Vanessa is quite fond of eating at Amy's. I wonder if Sean can bring her back. A strange smile appeared on Michael's face. Maybe he will be addicted to it too. Dykes didn't comment. When Meg returned to the restaurant, he went to Raina's hot pot restaurant to take a look. Tens of elves were modifying the restaurant's overall decoration. Adding wood and green embellishments in the large expanse of gold made the restaurant look less luxurious, and more refreshing and natural. This made the hot pot restaurant more suitable for the low-spending crowd. Choosing elven carpenters was indeed a very good decision. Meg nodded with satisfaction. "Boss, you're here." Raina came down from the second floor, and saw Meg standing in the middle of the main hall. She quickly walked up to him. I was on my way back from some errands, so I came in to take a look." Meg nodded with a smile, and praised, "The decorations are pretty good. They are all very outstanding carpenters. The effect has completely exceeded my expectations." Raina nodded in agreement. The large expanse of gold gave her a headache, but after the elf's skillful modification, the hot pot restaurant now exceeded her expectations. "Oh, yes. Boss, I'm almost done with the first version of the hot pot soup. Can you try it for me?" Raina looked at Meg expectantly. "Oh. You've already decided on the first version?" Meg was also a little surprised to hear that, but he quickly nodded with a smile. "Of course. Do you want to go back to the restaurant, or do you want to do it here? I've already started using the kitchen upstairs. I've already prepared the first version of the hot pot soup. You just have to come upstairs with me." Raina led Meg upstairs. Wonderful book house. Chapter 1600. There was a slightly smaller hall on the second floor of Rena's hot pot restaurant. There were dozens of tables in the hall, and there were sealed private rooms around the hall. The private rooms were labeled with simple numbers, and there were a total of 32 of them. As for the kitchen, it took up almost half of the space on the second floor. Although it was not as scientific as modern kitchens, this kitchen was already divided into sections. The washing area, cutting area, cooking area, and so on were all completely separated. The stoves used were also the most advanced magic stoves. This is what a big restaurant should be like. Meg stood at the door and looked at the kitchen that was several times bigger than his own restaurant. He could not help but feel emotional. "Boss, please sit here." Raina pushed a small dining cart out. There was a two-tone pot with red soup and clear soup. There were also all kinds of dishes on plates. There were vegetables, tripe, beef, and all kinds of dishes from Mamie's. Furthermore, they were all very fresh. They must have been bought and prepared in the morning. Meg did not stand on ceremony, and sat down at the nearest hot pot table. These hot pot tables had been prepared beforehand. Unlike Mamie's induction cooker, this one used a magic stove. One only needed to change the flammable stone regularly, and the temperature could be adjusted. The flammable stone was a commonly used heating fuel in this world. It was a type of black stone that was the size of a baby's fist and had a smooth surface like a pebble. It was a strange stone that could emit stable heat through the activation of a magic array. It was not expensive, and even an ordinary family could afford it. Using this magic stove to heat up hot pot was indeed a very good idea. Bennett was indeed outstanding in business. Meg had to admit that. At least this hot pot restaurant had successfully replicated Mamie's by 70% to 80%. It only needed a talent like Raina to lead it, and the hot pot restaurant could become a machine that made money continuously. It was a pity that he did not manage to poach Raina. Instead, he had thoughts that he should not have. The soup pot was still hot. Raina placed the two-tone pot on the stove, and it began to boil after a short while. Only then did Meg focus his attention on the soup pot in front of him. There were quite a lot of dried chili and pepper floating on the surface of the red soup pot. The butter soup had a tempting color, and the soup base was stir-fried with various spices. The aroma of the soup base was a little pungent, but it also rushed over mercilessly, making it hard to resist. Meg sniffed carefully, closed his eyes, and thought seriously for a while. He did not know what spices Raina used, but it actually reached 70% to 80% of the soup base that he made. The remaining 20% to 30% should be due to the differences in spices. She did not leave it empty, but replaced it with other spices to make the spicy soup base different from the one he made. The fragrance of the spicy hot pot is very special. It is obviously different from the one I made, but it does not lose the spicy flavor. The specific taste can only be known after tasting it. Meg opened his eyes and said, and then his gaze fell on the clear soup pot next to him. The most important thing in the clear soup pot was whether the bone broth was boiled in place. Raina did not need to worry about this. The thick white soup base had already explained everything. However, in this soup pot, there were also green onions and a few red dried fruits. What is this? Meg picked up the chopsticks and picked up a dried fruit that looked a bit like a red date. This is a cod of fruit. It is slightly sour and can improve the freshness. When we stew meat, we often add a few in it. It can make the soup thicker and more delicious, so I also added a few in the clear soup pot. It can make the monotonous soup pot richer in color. Raina explained. It is equivalent to replacing the roll of tomatoes, and it is not easy to cook. It is a very creative addition. Meg put the cod of fruit back into the soup pot. In terms of appearance, this double-flavored soup pot, whether it was the red soup or the clear soup, had reached the level that made people want to try it. It was not inferior to Mamie's hot pot. In terms of fragrance, what made Meg gratified was that Raina had achieved innovation and differentiation, so that this hot pot restaurant would not be completely reduced to a low-quality version of Mamie's hot pot's special area. Raina's face did not show too much joy. She put the dishes on the dining cart one by one on the table and said a little nervously, "Please taste it." "Okay, I'll try the clear soup pot first." Meg picked up a piece of fat beef with the chopsticks and rinsed it in the clear soup pot. The thin fresh beef had marble-like fat and quickly curled up in the boiling soup pot. Meg did not have time to let it grow old and lifted it out of the soup pot. In order to better taste the taste of the soup pot, Meg directly put the fat beef into his mouth without dipping it. The fat beef was tender and juicy. It was soft and smooth in the mouth. After it was boiled in the rich bone soup with a slight sour taste, it was even more delicious. Without any dipping sauce, the taste buds had been completely activated by the delicious and rich beef. After swallowing it, the taste of the meat in the mouth and teeth was endless. This should be the fat beef cut from the top of the head of the best yellow ox. A yellow ox weighing 1,000 pounds could only be cut out of 12 pounds of the top of the head of the cow. It could be said that it was extremely precious. Raina's attitude towards the ingredients made Meg quite gratified. She did not relax the control of the quality of the ingredients because of the position of the hot pot restaurant. Moreover, the cod of fruit brought him a big surprise. The sour taste was not as sharp as the acetic acid, but a very mild sour taste. In this soup pot, it really had a very good effect of improving the freshness, even better than that of the tomatoes. Then Meg put a few cabbages and lotus slices into the pot. The cabbages became soft in a short while. Similarly, there was no dipping sauce. The cabbages in winter were the freshest and sweetest. Even if it was boiled in plain water, it could still be delicious. After it was boiled in the bone soup, the freshness and sweetness had been catalyzed to the greatest extent. It was the satisfaction of scalding the mouth. As for the lotus slices, Meg still chose to dip them in the dipping sauce that had just been prepared after tasting a mouthful of them. For this kind of existence that was difficult to be tasted, it still needed to be adjusted with the dipping sauce to really show its damn deliciousness. The clear soup hot pot becomes very special because of the existence of the cod of fruit. The dipping effect is also very good. As long as it is matched with the personal dipping sauce, it can make the customers who have a light taste satisfied with the hot pot. Meg put down the chopsticks and looked at Raina seriously and commented, "Thank you." Raina's face finally bloomed with a smile. During this period of time, she had been thinking about how to make the seemingly simple clear soup hot pot rich with its own characteristics. Adding the cod of fruit originally made her quite worried that Meg would reject it. She didn't expect to get such a high evaluation. Now, let me try the red soup pot. Meg took off his coat, reached out to unbutton the top button of his shirt, rolled up his sleeves, and then made himself a special dipping sauce for the red soup hot pot. He picked up the chopsticks and was ready to officially start. Of course, the red soup pot should be eaten for the hot pot. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 1601. The tripe bobbed up and down in the red broth, covered in bright red oil, before being fed into his mouth. The spicy broth exploded in the mouth like a pioneer, followed by the crispy tripe. It was as thin as a leaf, but it didn't have the slightest hardness or toughness when chewed. The crispy texture was intoxicating. Apart from the spiciness of the broth, the unique fragrance made Meg raise his eyebrows slightly. This difference gave the spicy hot pot a different kind of deliciousness, and it was a pleasant surprise. The different spices blended the flavors perfectly. They did not compete for the main flavor of the spicy hot pot, but they gave it a richer layer of flavor. He picked up a long duck intestine and dipped it into the hot pot. After a few dips, the duck intestine started to curl up. He rolled it in the dipping dish before putting it into his mouth. The perfect heat allowed the crispness of the duck intestines to be released perfectly. The fragrant and spicy red soup removed the fishy smell of the duck intestines and gave the duck intestines a wonderful taste. The sound of slurping and slurping almost made one want to chew their tongue. Half a spoonful of pig's brain had been cooked in the pot for a while. He bit it with a spoon and blew on it before stuffing it. The appropriate spiciness made his taste buds tense up, and then the pig's brain melted in his mouth. The tender texture was similar to tofu pudding, but the pig's brain was softer. The fragrant taste bloomed on the tip of his tongue, and together with the spiciness, it brought about a unique taste. The enoki mushrooms were added into the pot, and the lotus root slices were tossed up and down in the pot. Meg used the serving chopsticks to pick up the beef. He looked up at Raina, who was still standing nervously at the side, and said with a smile, "Don't just watch. Come, sit down and eat with us." Oh. Raina was stunned for a moment, but she still sat down opposite Meg and joined the group of people eating the hot pot. The hot and spicy hot pot dispelled the chill of winter. As the red broth boiled, it was a testament to the deliciousness. Meg wiped the sweat on his forehead and the red oil at the corner of his mouth with a tissue. He looked at Raina and said, "After the renovations are completed, we'll open for business right away after we find employees. If the soup base and ingredients can be maintained at this level, and the price is slightly lower than Mamie's, the hot pot restaurant's business won't be bad." Red soup also passed. Raina looked at Meg in surprise, but she still tried to control her emotions. "Yes, your improvement is very successful. Even some flaws can't cover up its brilliance. This is a brand new spicy hot pot base. It has a unique taste, but it's still a delicious hot pot base," Meg nodded seriously and said. Raina's talent in identifying and recognizing spices once again shocked him. Finding such a suitable substitute in such a short time and determining the ratio to mix the finished hot pot base ingredient, he admitted that even he couldn't do it now. "Thank you." The smile on Raina's face finally bloomed completely. Her efforts over the past few days and nights were not in vain. Getting Meg's approval was more important than anyone else's. After all, he was the one who created the hot pot, and no one had more right to speak than him. In terms of recruitment, you can consider the elves. There should be many of Phyllis's clansmen who are unemployed now. Many of them are gifted. If they can be placed in suitable positions, it can greatly reduce the number of employees in the hot pot restaurant, and at the same time increase the overall work efficiency, Meg suggested. Because the factory in the north of the city hadn't been completed yet, there were still 20,000 night elves who were unemployed. Among them, there was no lack of 6th or 7th level elven magic casters. For example, a 5th level water elven magic caster's water drawing spell could take on the work of a dozen old Andes who were in charge of cleaning up, and do it better than them. Fewer employees could reduce the operating costs of the hot pot restaurant, and at the same time, improve the service quality in terms of space, and avoid the situation of personnel chaos. Let the elves be waitresses. Raina's eyes lit up, but soon showed some worry. Would the noble elves be willing to be waitresses in the hot pot restaurant? Would their salary be very high? You can ask Phyllis. Maybe it's not as expensive and difficult to recruit an elven employee as you think, Meg said with a smile. Okay. Raina nodded. She was indeed overthinking. She didn't know much about the situation, but she thought too much. I should go back. Although I'm full, I have to prepare lunch for them and get ready for business. Meg glanced at his watch. It was almost 11 o'clock. He got up and walked in the direction of the stairs as he said, I'll be in charge of the bone soup today. You can work in the restaurant first. It's okay to come to the restaurant later. Okay, then I'll have to trouble you. Raina looked at Meg's back and said. About the flaw in the spicy hot pot, maybe you can try it again. Meg said without turning back. Flaw. Raina's gaze fell on the red soup pot in front of her, which was almost half gone. She picked up the spoon and scooped up a spoonful of red soup to her nose. She closed her eyes and sniffed seriously. Her delicate eyebrows knitted together. Is there something extra or something missing? Why isn't Raina here today? Meg was in the kitchen making lunch for his people. Mia and the others arrived one after another. They looked around and wondered. She already had lunch. I just tried the new hot pot she developed in her restaurant. Because the taste was outstanding, both of them were full, Meg said with a smile. Raina is so outstanding. She completed the transformation of the hot pot base so quickly. Does that mean that the hot pot restaurant will be open soon? Mia asked in surprise. The others also looked at Meg with curiosity. The new hot pot restaurant was very big. It was many times bigger than Mamie's. They were looking forward to it. Yes. As long as the renovation is completed and the staff recruitment is successful, we can open for business immediately. Meg nodded. The most time-consuming and labor-consuming renovation was nearing its end. I'm looking forward to it. I hope Raina's hot pot restaurant can show those cheap hot pot restaurants, but with poor quality control and taste, what a real cheap hot pot restaurant is. Mia said with an expectant look. It's still easy to beat them. Meg said in his heart. He was actually looking forward to the new hot pot restaurant. A restaurant with a capacity of 1,000 people. Even if the average consumption was 100 copper coins, the daily turnover should be able to easily exceed 200,000. This was a hen that laid golden eggs. Let's clear the table and get ready for lunch, Meg said to everyone as he turned off the fire and scooped the red braised pork from the casserole onto plates. After lunch, Irina asked Meg to go upstairs. Once she closed the door, she went straight to the point. Sean is coming to Chaos City. He's arriving today. Do you want to kill him? Chapter 1602. Meg was stunned for a while before he realized what Irina was talking about. He frowned and asked, Are they looking for trouble? No. I heard that they are visiting Chaos City on behalf of the Roth Empire, and Sean is leading them. Irina shook her head slightly. In that case, I'm afraid it's not suitable to kill them directly. Meg pondered, and said, now that the Night Elves have taken root in Chaos City, and have reached an agreement with Chaos City, we are now part of Chaos City. We have to consider Chaos City's standpoint when we do things. Are you no longer that carefree loner? Irina frowned. Sean couldn't escape from the attack on that rainy night back then. If he hadn't stayed in the army, she would have taken his life long ago. Meg looked at Irina, and knew why she wanted to kill Sean. If he had the chance, he wouldn't mind sending that seemingly magnanimous first prince to his death. He gently said, yes, no one dared to do anything to the elves in the past. But now, the Night Elves are drifting duckweed with no one to rely on. The Wind Forest can't wait for us to capsize. If we leave Chaos City, we will be in a very difficult situation. Sooner or later, we will make those damned fellows pay the price. All right. Irina nodded slightly, and didn't refute Meg's words. Oh, yes. Raina's hot pot restaurant is almost done, and she needs to recruit workers. I recommended the Night Elves to her. Meg changed the topic to a more relaxed one. If she needs 20,000 elves, I can satisfy her. Irina's lips curled up slightly. Meg pondered for a while, and said, we need about 10 people in the kitchen, and about 20 service staff. However, they must all be magic casters with a skill. After all, it was a big restaurant that could accommodate up to 1,000 people eating at the same time, and it was separated into upper and lower floors, private rooms, and a public hall. They had to allocate service staff according to the area to deal with complicated dining situations. I'll go back and talk to the guard captain. The standard of the Night Elves F&B department is currently quite low. I want to use the hot pot restaurant as a training ground. Send a group of people over every once in a while to raise the overall standard, Irina said without hesitation. If it's for training and learning. I'm afraid that the Night Elves will not only get carried away by just eating hot pot, but they will also get heaty easily. Meg raised his eyebrows, but he didn't question Irina's decision. At least the problem of the new hot pot restaurant's employees was solved. He helped Raina find a group of more reliable and powerful employees. Michael said that he wants to see me, and he also asked you out. Do you want to go with me this afternoon? Irina asked Meg. I just met him and Roland this morning. I guess the two of them have already guessed my identity, but they didn't say anything. There are some things that can only be said with a different identity. Meg shook his head. Since he chose to hide Alex's identity, Michael and the others tacitly chose not to ask further. However, regarding the evil god, using Alex's identity would allow them to have a more in-depth and high-level discussion. Then I'll go and take a nap. We'll go out after you're done. Irina stretched, and her loose dress was instantly filled with her voluptuous curves. All right, you go and rest first. Meg nodded with a smile, and left the room. The customers who didn't get to drink rum in the morning still came in the afternoon. However, everyone became much more restrained. After hearing that Mamie's alcohol couldn't be taken out and wasn't sold separately, they didn't insist on bringing their own alcohol jugs onto the stage. The ice element mage in the morning had indeed frightened many people. Old Sim's brand of rum, 2 glasses first. Do you have any recommended dishes here? Husband and wife long slice. Although the name of the dish sounds weird, give me a portion of that. What kind of alcohol is this beer? Give me a glass too. Hey, bro. You're here too. Come. Let's gather at the table and have a taste of this rum to see if it's authentic. Customers who liked alcohol quickly gathered at a few tables. Many of them were familiar with each other in the circle, and usually wouldn't come out to drink during the day. It was really because the 3 words, Old Sim, were too tempting and irresistible. Brothers, I'm also a regular at Mamie's. Let me give you a reminder. Drinking here is different from other places. You have to follow the rules. Otherwise, even a 10th tier mage will be thrown out, Carlo reminded everyone. He was a little dizzy after drinking rum at Mamie's yesterday, and was pulled to the second round. He didn't control his mouth, and leaked the news that Mamie's was selling 15-year-old rum that old Sim brewed personally. So evil. Is this a black shop? A lean man lowered his voice and said. Yeah, isn't drinking to relax? If we're controlled by a bunch of rules, wouldn't it be boring? Someone at the side also muttered. No, this is a restaurant that even the Castellan occasionally visits. Carlo shook his head with a smile. He flipped the menu on the table and said, actually, Mamie's rules aren't hard to accept. It's just that we have to respect each other and the staff of the restaurant. This is the behavior of a gentleman. Everyone picked up the menu on their table. There were rules listed behind it. Don't make a racket in the restaurant. Don't make things difficult for the waiters for no reason. That seems to be the case. But after drinking, it's hard to speak softly. A bald man rubbed his bald head awkwardly. Hee, isn't it just drinking and not boasting? As long as the alcohol is good, we don't care about that. Another person chuckled. Spicy grilled fish, sliced pork lung in chili sauce, steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers, spicy crayfish, roast beef kebabs, and other dishes were served one after another. The rum and beer that everyone had ordered were also served together. The customers who were still not used to the food were soon immersed in the good wine and good food, and were no longer in the mood to boast. They couldn't stop eating the spicy and refreshing dishes, so there was no time for them to talk about other things. Meanwhile, the rum made everyone's eyes light up. This kind of mellow and sweet rum was a good wine that was hard to come by in Chaos City. Those who had drunk Old Sim's rum before were even more surprised. They were 100% sure that this was made by Old Sim, and the quality was even better than the 3-year-old rum that they had drunk before. This boss is too nice, isn't he? A 15-year-old rum, and it's a rare product personally brewed by Master Old Sim, only costs 1,000 copper coins a glass. It's so touching, a half-drunk customer said emotionally as he wiped his tears. Ding! Nice guy card +1. A notification sounded in Meg's mind. 7 good person cards have been collected. You can summon a god. Mysterious dark cuisine recipe. Do you want to exchange it now? Chapter 1603. Meg, who was busy cooking in the kitchen, was stunned when he heard the system's notification. Then, he quickly raised his eyebrows and asked, System, what the hell is this mysterious dark cuisine? What era is it now? Does the term dark cuisine still need to be explained? The system's voice carried a hint of impatience. No. Meg rolled his eyes. He never thought that there would be a day when he would be mocked by the system. Of course, he knew what dark cuisine was. However, the fact that he had summoned a dark cuisine with 7 good person cards really shocked him. Dark cuisine has always been a mudslide in the gourmet world. It has always been in a very mysterious area. This darkness may also be caused by regional differences. However, this does not affect them from occupying a place in the gourmet world and causing people to tremble in fear. The system said with some anticipation, the host's reward this time is to draw a dark cuisine recipe from the mysterious dark cuisine warehouse. Can I reject it? Meg frowned. He did not want to add things like stargazy pie and canned herring to the menu. No. What's the use of you rejecting it? Even if I want it, I won't add it to the menu. Meg curled his lips in disdain. System, host, you are challenging the system's authority. I am warning you now. Alright, I'll give you a tip of $5. Stay aside quietly. Okay. The system's humble tone disappeared. Foodies from another world, let's see what kind of dark cuisine I will draw for you. Meg looked at the mysterious wheel that appeared in his mind. He rubbed his hands and clicked on the start button. The wheel spun crazily, and the names of some dishes vaguely appeared on it: fried cicada, soy milk, stargazy pie, roasted moth, canned herring. Just looking at the names of those dishes made Meg's delicate body tremble. The taste of this dark cuisine was indeed not light. Ding! Congratulations, host, you have drawn a special dark cuisine, roasted pig's eyes. As a special delicacy of Guangxi, roasted pig's eyes successfully occupied a place in the world of dark cuisine with its wild cooking style and eating method. Moreover, with a string of strong publicity, it stepped onto the path of becoming an internet celebrity. The system's voice rang out. Roasted pig's eyes. Meg fell into deep thought as he stared at the 3 shining words on the wheel. Can you roast pig's eyes too? What is a string of life? This upstart in the world of dark cuisine, if you put a skewer of pig's eyes on the grill, it wouldn't be dark cuisine anymore. That's a horror dish. Meg looked at the glittering experience bag in his mind. For the first time, he felt a sense of resistance towards the recipe experience bag. He felt that he would be baptized by the bloody and cruel contents if he opened it. All right, I'll just pretend that I didn't draw this prize. Meg was about to leave the live stream. Fellow Daoist, please wait. The system's voice sounded. Before Meg could come back to his senses, the glittering experience bag that was floating in front of him suddenly rushed forward and collided with his head, instantly exploding into a sky full of golden stars. A huge amount of information suddenly rushed into his mind. Cleaning and marinating the bloody pig's eyes, skewering the pig's eyes one by one, making sizzling sounds on the grill, exploding pig's eyes between his teeth, each scene gave Meg a huge impact. The amount of information was far less than the more complicated dishes in the past, but because the scene was too bloody and exciting, it took Meg a while to recover. System, fuck you. Meg couldn't help but swear. He wasn't prepared at all, and a bloody movie was smashed into his mind just like that. According to the system's rules, the host has to receive the reward after receiving it. This is not under the control of the system said innocently. Then I still want to fuck you. Meg rolled his eyes. In his previous life, as a novelty-seeking gourmet, he had tried stargazy pie, fried cicada monkey, and so on. To him, the degree of darkness was ordinary. If he came across a good fried cicada monkey, he would sit at a roadside stall and have a drink or two. However, the degree of darkness of this roasted pig's eyes was several levels higher than that of the fried cicada monkey. Whether it was the chef who had to have a strong heart to handle the large basin of pig's eyes, or whether the chef could bear the feeling of putting the scalding pig's eyes into his mouth and then biting the eyeballs until they burst, it was also a test of the diner. After watching it, Meg felt that the Great Apocalypse Dominator didn't seem to be that big of a deal. If pigs can grow so many eyes, wouldn't they be the perfect provider of pig's eyes? Meg thought of the stone statue in the stone box. The octopus tentacles were full of eyes. The system hasn't found a wild Great Apocalypse Dominator. Consider extracting the multi-eye gene to genetically modify the wild boar that provides the eyeballs to increase the efficiency of the whole pig, the system said in agreement. Forget it. Meg pursed his lips. He didn't want to bother with the system. He had already received the experience bag. After this baptism, his fear of eyeballs had basically disappeared, and his trypophobia was cured. Ding! The host has drawn the special dark cuisine, roasted pig's eyes, and triggered a hidden mission. Please make the roasted pig's eyes famous in Chaos City's culinary world within a week. The target is to sell 3,000 skewers of roasted pig's eyes. Mission reward, receive a super fusion recipe. Mission failure punishment, eat 10 pig's eye sashimi. Just as Meg was about to leave the mental space, the system's voice sounded again. Ha! Meg's expression froze. No, what the hell is pig's eye sashimi? Can pig's eyes be made into sashimi too? Meg felt like tearing a few systems apart to have a taste. He had heard of pig's large intestine sashimi, but was pig's eye sashimi serious? This / would cause the liquid to explode. Please complete the mission on time, the system said calmly. Meg put the pig's eye sashimi aside for the time being, and asked, also, what's that super fusion recipe? Earth's gourmets are limited by the ingredients available, so the dishes they create are based on the ingredients available on Earth. However, the Norland continent has many ingredients of a higher level. After integrating the experiences of many chefs, the system has created a batch of super fusion recipes based on the ingredients unique to the Norland continent, the system replied. Sounds like dark cuisine. Meg frowned. Nonsense. As the god of cookery system, there's no system more professional than me in this aspect, the system said seriously. Hee hee. Chapter 1604. Boss, the fried rice is going to burn. Mia's voice appeared beside Mag's ear, pulling him back from his thoughts. The wok in his hands quickly went into stir-frying mode. Meg glanced at the fried rice in the wok that had already changed color, and thought to himself, that was close. I almost wasted the food. After putting the roasted pig's eyes and pig's eye sashimi to the back of his mind, Meg began to focus on dealing with the busy business hours. Boss, what are you thinking about? Mia glanced at Meg with a puzzled expression. Boss was usually very focused when he was cooking, and such a situation where he was zoning out during the fried rice cooking process had never happened before. Serve the dishes. I'm a little lost in my thoughts, Meg explained to Mia with a smile as he scooped the fried rice from the wok onto a few plates. Mia nodded, and turned to serve the dishes to the customers with a smile. If I knew it was so easy to earn money from selling alcohol in Chaos City, Grandpa would have come earlier. Hannah put her chin on the counter and looked at the drinkers who were moved to tears as they drank the rum that cost 1,000 copper coins a glass, and muttered softly. All these years, she and her grandfather had been brewing alcohol for the chief and the nobles in the Falk tribe. Their income wasn't much, and the money that they had saved for so many years was all gone after she built a few brewing machines. But in Chaos City, a small glass of alcohol could actually be sold for 1,000 copper coins. That barrel of 15-year-old rum could hold over 1,200 glasses, so it could be sold for 1,220,000 copper coins. After doing the math seriously, Hannah suddenly regretted selling the rum to the new chief at a low price in the Falk tribe. There were hundreds of barrels of aged rum stored in the wine cellar, and there were dozens of barrels older than 15-year-old rum. If they were to be moved to Chaos City, and she actually sold all of them for 500,000 copper coins. No, I have to go draw the blueprint immediately and build the brewing machine as soon as possible. Then, in another 15 years, I will be able to wake up laughing while lying on countless oak barrels. Hannah jumped up from the chair and ran upstairs. She locked herself in the study and continued to draw. The process of turning the complicated brewing machine from a messy draft into a design with clear dimensions required complicated verification and calculations. Fortunately, the boss had taught her how to use the decimal system and calculations in addition to teaching her how to draw the machine yesterday. After he was done with this trip, Mag went upstairs to check on Hannah, who was in the study, after he saw all the drunk customers were sent into the horse-drawn carriages. Unlike yesterday, when she couldn't even hold a pencil firmly and couldn't draw straight lines, Hannah, who was bent over the table and drawing today, already showed a pretty good professional level. The sketch had already been redrawn, and the dimensions of each part were displayed on the paper in 3 views. It wasn't that Meg hadn't considered giving Hannah a professional graphics computer to let her learn CAD and Pro/E, but considering the current industrial level of this world, he ultimately rejected the idea. After all, the system might not be able to complete the purchase. Back then, didn't the Chinese scientists also rely on paper and pen to create an atomic bomb? It wouldn't be so troublesome to create a brewing machine that didn't require much technology. Meg watched for a while, then quietly closed the door and left. Hannah was clearly more professional when it came to brewing. He might have a more efficient plan, but for branded alcohol, the most important thing for high profits wasn't the production, but the unique and strong taste. Normal rum could only sell for 10 copper coins a cup, while Old Sim could sell for 1,000 copper coins a cup. This was the embodiment of the brand value. Meg changed his clothes, put on the 100 transformation mask, and equipped the Tian-Du sword. He left the restaurant with Irina and headed to the city lord's manor. "Alex, long time no see." Michael looked at Meg and extended his right hand. "Lord Michael." Meg only nodded slightly, but didn't extend his hand. "Our dragon-slaying night hasn't changed at all." Michael withdrew his hand with a smile, and didn't show any displeasure. Meg glanced at Michael without batting an eyelid. Although this city lord looked boorish, his acting was quite good. "All right, let's talk about the black fog and the evil god." Irina directly interrupted everyone's hypocritical pleasantries. "That's good too. This matter concerns the future of the Norland continent. We should have a good talk." Michael's smile faded, and he nodded with a solemn expression. Everyone sat down at the round table in the secret chamber, and the atmosphere started to become tense. "The first person I met who was corroded by the black fog, or perhaps controlled by the devil, was Borg. After being controlled by the devil, his power had an obvious increase. Perhaps this was the reason why he sold his soul to the devil. During that period of time, there was an evil aura that tried to corrode the Tree of Life, and posed a great threat to the Tree of Life. However, it was stopped under the influence of a certain force. During the battle at the Goblin's border, I used the holy light to break Borg's black fog, and then killed him. This proved that the holy light had an obvious suppressive effect on the black fog," Irina said. "So Borg was controlled by the devil, and he actually tried to corrode the Tree of Life." Michael and Roland were both shocked. They didn't receive any information about this. "If the devil used a powerful force as bait, I'm afraid not many people could resist this temptation," Roland said with a grave expression. Meg continued, "In the Boundless Sea realm, we found an island shrouded in black fog. Alfred was receiving the devil's power on that island. We found a strange stone statue there. When I looked into its eyes, my spirit was pulled into a strange space. It was an extremely huge stone palace. At the end of the stone palace, there was a skeleton sitting on the throne. The first thing he said was, 'Young man, do you desire power?' The atmosphere in the secret room became even more solemn. Power was something that all the races in this world pursued. Before the environment where the strong were respected changed, not many people would be able to resist great power. I still used the holy light to break the stone statue, and the black fog was also expelled with the holy light. Normal magic has no effect on the black fog," Irina added. "If only the holy light can get rid of the black fog, this is not good news." Roland frowned, and said, "Light element mages are rare to begin with, and those who can form the holy light are even rarer. Once the black fog erupts all over the world, I'm afraid we won't have any effective means to get rid of it. We have to find the source of the black fog as soon as possible and get rid of it, or find a better way to get rid of the black fog. If we sit and wait, we'll only see things get worse. Those fellows can live for countless years, and we don't have that much time," Meg said in a low voice. "Luckily, we left one alive. Ferdinand is still in our hands." Irina's tone was much more relaxed. Chapter 1605. The conversation didn't last for too long, but Chaos City, the Night Elves, and Meg had reached an alliance agreement. After confirming the existence of the evil gods, and that they might be trying to influence and control this world, or even destroy it, Michael and Roland displayed the courage of a qualified ruler, and decided to work together with Meg and Irina to fight to eliminate the evil. Although Chaos City didn't belong to any race, it still belonged to the Norland continent. They couldn't possibly stay out of this alone. Meg and Irina naturally didn't have any doubts about that. They also realized that they couldn't stop the spread of evil with their power alone. With Chaos City as an ally, they would at least have a firm and strong backing. "Don't we need to hand Ferdinand over to them?" Irina asked Meg after they came out of the city lord's castle. "I'm worried that some uncontrollable accident might happen. Before the peace conference, it's more reliable to leave him in our hands." Meg shook his head. Although Ferdinand was in a coma, the black fog around him hadn't dissipated completely. It wasn't suitable to hand him over to someone else. Irina nodded slightly. After a while, she looked at Meg, and asked, "Where do you think those fellows are hiding?" Meg shook his head. "Perhaps they're not hidden. They should be sealed in a certain place, or many places. It could be under the boundless sea, or it could also be in a certain mountain. If they're not sealed, this world should already be in a state of complete chaos. If they're sealed, doesn't that mean there really are gods in this world? Can you sense the existence of the god of life?" Meg asked Irina curiously. Irina pondered for a while, and nodded. "I think she should exist, but her connection with the Tree of Life isn't very close. I can only vaguely sense that there's some kind of mysterious power on the Tree of Life. It's unfathomable. We can't be sure if those so-called gods can live through the long years like the great old ones. However, if they still exist, they might be able to sense that those fellows are getting restless, and come out to patch the seal or something. The problem might be solved then," Meg said with a smile. This was probably the most optimistic situation. "Patch. It's to patch up the loopholes in the seal." "Oh. Do you think it's Alex who's wearing a mask, or Mr. Mac?" Michael asked Roland with a smile. Roland thought for a while, and said, "He's Alex, and Mr. Mac. I also think that he doesn't reject the identity of a restaurant owner. He even enjoys it," Michael said with a smile. "It's precisely because of this that he can avoid all the suspicious looks. If he didn't come into contact with us, we wouldn't even have realized that he actually transformed into a restaurant owner." "Yes. Who would have thought that the dragon-slaying knight Alex, who could chop off a giant dragon's head with a sword, could actually make such delicious dishes? Even if they had a little doubt in their hearts, they would throw it away completely after tasting the food he made." Michael nodded in agreement. "Will they attack Sean?" Roland asked worriedly. With Alex and Irina together, even if Sean was accompanied by 2 great magic casters and 2 10th-tier knights, they might not be able to guarantee his safety. "Don't worry. They won't," Michael said without worry. "What?" "Big Brother Sean is coming to Chaos City." Vanessa looked at Abraham in surprise. She had been in Chaos City for more than a month. Although she enjoyed her hot pot and skewers every day, she still missed her family. It would be great if she could see Big Brother Sean in Chaos City. "Yes. Sean is in charge of leading the team to visit Chaos City this time." Abraham nodded. He looked at Vanessa with a complicated expression, and said, "After the visit, he'll bring you back." Bring me back." Vanessa's smile froze instantly. She was stunned for a while before her expression collapsed. She looked at Abraham, and asked, "Who said I'm going back?" Abraham tried to speak as gently as he could. "Look, you've been away for more than a month. His Majesty and the Queen miss you very much," so they specially sent Sean to bring you back so that they won't worry about you. No. Although I do miss them, where am I going to eat hot pot, skewers, soy milk, and youtiao when I go back? Besides, my teeth haven't recovered yet. I want to stay by Mr. Mac's side and let him continue to treat my teeth. I'm not going anywhere. I want to eat hot pot. Vanessa shook her head like a rattledrum. Tears were already welling up in her eyes as she looked at Abraham pitifully. Oh, my little ancestor, this is not something that I can decide. Your royal father asked me to send you back last month, and I even delayed it for a month. Now that Sean is on his way, what can I do? Abraham shrugged as he looked at Vanessa helplessly. Oh, my little ancestor, this is not something that I can decide. Vanessa pondered for a while before saying, then, can I come out again after I go back? That will depend on His Majesty. Abraham didn't say anything. However, judging from the king's letter yesterday, Vanessa probably wouldn't have a chance to come back to Chaos City in the near future. She was able to run away from home successfully the last time because the king had tacitly allowed it. I'm not looking forward to seeing Big Brother Sean anymore. Vanessa harumphed angrily. After a while, she looked at Abraham with a smile and said, Uncle Abraham, let's go for hot pot tonight. Slightly spicy? Abraham asked. Hee, it's all right. We'll decide when we get to the restaurant, Vanessa said with a smile. If it's insanely spicy, I'm not going. Abraham felt his anus tighten. It couldn't take any more damage. Your Highness, Chaos City is up ahead. A giant golden eagle glided across the sky, and a general reminded him. It said that this city is the only city in this world that can compare to Rodu. Looks like it's not an exaggeration after all. Sean looked at the giant city in the distance. The city walls were tall, and there were rows upon rows of buildings. This city that could accommodate 1 million people was indeed comparable to Rodu. It's just a city. Our Roth Empire has tens of thousands of kilometers of territory other than Rodu. It's not something a city that's been pieced together can compare to, a general said with a disdainful look. Everyone on the giant eagle's back burst into laughter. Chaos City was indeed nothing in the face of the powerful Roth Empire. All right, don't say things like that when we reach Chaos City, Sean said in a low voice. Xiao said in a low voice as he squinted at the city in the distance. He didn't know if he would meet that person this time. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 1606. Father. Father, bad news. Jonah barged into Bowen's study in a panic, and saw Bowen sitting behind the desk with a piece of porcelain in his hands. Didn't you go to get the ruling? Why are you so panicky? Bowen looked up at Jonah with a frown. This son of his was good at everything, except that he was too young and impatient. Chief Dominic. He's been arrested. Jonah's voice was trembling. Smack. The porcelain in Bowen's hands fell to the ground, and shattered into pieces. What did you say? Bowen stood up abruptly, and raised his voice. I went to the Department of Property Rights to get the ruling, and happened to see Dominic being taken away by the Grey Temple in shackles. I hurriedly went back to the tea house, and it was sealed up by the Grey Temple again. All the people and service staff we sent there were taken away by the Grey Temple. Jonah looked at Bowen anxiously. Father, did we touch something we shouldn't have this time? It's over. Bowen slumped back into his seat weakly. His face was a little pale, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. The Marquis family had been operating in Chaos City for many years, and Chief Dominic could be considered their family's closest high-ranking official in the City Lord's castle. They had worked closely together for many years, and each took what they needed. Now that Dominic was arrested, and the tea house was sealed up by the Grey Temple, Bowen had no choice but to link this to Bennett's incident. This time, not only would he not be able to get Bennett's share, but he might also have to cough up a lot of things. "Father. What should we do now?" Jonah was a little out of his wits. This sudden incident had completely messed up their plans. Bowen took a few deep breaths, and quickly regained his composure. He looked up at Jonah and said, "Go to the accounts room right now, and destroy all the accounts related to Dominic. After that, cut off all the assets that are in the gray area or that were established with Bennett's influence from the Marquis family. The Grey Temple is handling the case. Everyone in the Marquis Manor, put down whatever you are doing and gather in the courtyard. Anyone who is negligent will be severely punished." Right at this moment, a stern voice sounded in the Marquis Manor. "They're here, too fast." Bowen looked at the door, and couldn't hide his loneliness and indignation. "I want the spicy soup base, 3 times the insanely spicy." Vanessa, Abraham, Lola, Randy, and the rest sat down, and immediately ordered. Abraham's face turned green, and he looked at Vanessa with a sullen expression. "Can we be a little gentler, little ancestor? 3 times insanely spicy. Is this something a normal person can handle? It seems that Miss Windsor has a good appetite these days." Randy, on the other hand, had a relaxed expression. During this period of time, he often shared a table with Vanessa and the rest. His tolerance towards the insanely spicy food was far beyond that of ordinary people. "No, didn't Mr. Max say that real men have to eat insanely spicy?" Vanessa looked at Abraham seriously. "Uncle Abraham, I want to eat the insanely spicy." Then let's order a double hot pot. A pot within a pot. I'll just cook the smaller pot." Abraham tried to negotiate. "No, double hot pot is an insult to the spicy hot pot." Vanessa rejected cruelly, and then looked at Yaba Mia with a smile. "Big Sister Mia, we want the spicy soup base with 3 times the insanely spicy. As for the side dishes, we'll just have the usual." "All right, please wait a moment." Mia nodded with a smile, and then walked to the next table. Sigh. Abraham sighed. Who did he offend? It was her father who wanted her to go back, but he was the one who was tortured. "Miss, are we not waiting for young master?" Laura asked softly. "Didn't my brother send a letter over just now? He's not free tonight, so there's no need to wait for him." Vanessa shook her head. She didn't want to see Sean now, either. She just wanted to have another meal of spicy hot pot. "Oh." Laura nodded. She glanced at Vanessa's side profile, and didn't say anything else. This period of time in Chaos City was probably the happiest period for the princess. She was able to eat food that made her happy almost every day, and most importantly, the dental disease that had plagued her for many years had been perfectly treated in Chaos City. Now that His Highness Sean had come to Chaos City, and might have to bring her back to Rhoda the day after tomorrow, she definitely wouldn't be too happy. "Boss, the first barrel of rum is almost sold out." Mia put 8 glasses of rum on the tray, and reminded Meg when she saw that there was less than a third left on the barrel. "We have enough in stock. Don't worry." Meg agreed with a smile. As Connie wasn't old enough to drink yet, he had basically taken away all of Hannah's stock, especially the rum that was more than 20 years old. They were all in his hands. According to the market price, this batch of rum was worth more than 1 billion copper coins. After all, any bottle of Old Sim's rum that was more than 50 years old could probably be auctioned at a sky-high price. However, apart from a small portion of this rum that he intended to keep for himself, he intended to use most of it as the base liquor for the new distillery. Brewing wine was a long-term investment. Without enough aged rum, it wouldn't be able to fetch a high price. Meanwhile, this batch of aged rum in Meg's hands would become the foundation of the distillery. It could allow the new distillery to go on the road quickly and get through the awkward 3 years of brewing. He didn't intend to cheat Hannah out of this sum of money. After all, this was considered a huge inheritance that her grandfather had left her. Of course, he didn't want to cash it out for her directly. After all, no one knew if she would abandon her talent in the face of such a huge sum of money and become a lazy salted fish that only knew how to eat and work. If not for the fact that he had no money, who would want to force himself to be talented? He intended to take out 10 barrels of 15-year-old rum to open up the rum market in Chaos City, and then cut off the supply for a period of time until the new distillery was built and started production, and the new rum would be officially released. The hunger marketing methods of Mr. Gua and Mr. Me were really worth learning. Of course, Mr. Me's methods were even better. After all, they were the only ones who could still soar despite not having any stock all year round. Meg glanced in the direction of the designated hot pot area. Vanessa and Abraham's table, but Sean wasn't there. It seemed like he should be busy at the city lord's castle now. However, Sean was probably going to bring Vanessa back this time, right? Actually, he quite liked this little princess. She was innocent and romantic, and didn't have the princess syndrome in her words and actions. Hence, he was willing to treat her teeth. King Andre and his 2 sons weren't good people, but this daughter and that little prince were still all right. Meg wasn't an extreme person who would kill everyone with one move. Of course, if Sean came to Mamie's for a meal, he wouldn't mind recommending him to try the restaurant's latest dark cuisine. Chapter 1607. After the dinner service, Dykes came to inform Meg that the Minister of Property Rights, Dominic, had been taken away by the Grey Temple for investigation, and that both the City Lord's Castle and the Grey Temple had launched an investigation on the Marquis family. Can the patriarch of the Marquis family still be released? Meg asked with a smile. The investigation is not over yet, so the results are still unclear. However, as long as the Marquis family did not directly participate in the illegal businesses, bribe the City Lord's Castle officials, and take over the illegal businesses, it's enough for him to stay in there for a while, Dykes said with a smile. Just for a while. Isn't it too easy for him? The Marquis family has to pay back everything that they have gained through Dominic. I think it's enough for him to be heartbroken for a while, Dykes said. Then, he took out a document and handed it to Meg. This is the official document of the Hot Pot restaurant. It has the City Lord's seal on it. No one will come to the Hot Pot restaurant to claim sovereignty in the future. Meg opened the document and scanned through it. It was indeed Michael's seal, and it stated that the Hot Pot restaurant officially belonged to Raina. There was no doubt about it. Please thank the City Lord for upholding justice for me, Meg said to Dykes with a smile as he kept the document. Sorry for troubling you to come over so late at night. It's all right. This was an internal problem in the City Lord's castle. We should be the ones apologizing. Then, I shall not disturb Mr. Mac's rest. I'll come for breakfast tomorrow morning. Dykes said a few polite words and left. The matter has been settled. Those who tried to fight for the ownership of the Hot Pot restaurant are all in the VIP cell next door. With this document, there won't be any messy disputes in the Hot Pot restaurant later. Meg said with a smile as he walked into the restaurant with the document. He saw Raina, who had packed her things and was about to leave with Mia and the rest. Really? Raina received the document in surprise. She read it carefully, and exclaimed, "That's great. The Hot Pot restaurant can open as planned now." "Oh, yes. I haven't asked when you plan to open for business." "On the opening day, Mimi's will be closed for the day. Everyone will be there to support her." Meg asked curiously. He had been so busy these days that he had forgotten to ask about this important matter. Rena pondered for a while and said, "The renovation is basically complete. Phyllis has also helped me contact a batch of outstanding elves. I want to conduct an interview with them tomorrow, and choose the most suitable ones. The training period is 3 days, and I plan to officially open for business in 5 days. You sure are swift and decisive." Meg smiled and nodded. 5 days later would be Mamie's daily rest day. Raina must have considered this as well. Amy came over with Ugly Duckling in her arms, and curiously asked, "What's the name of Big Sister Raina's hot pot restaurant?" "Yeah. What's the name?" Mia and the others also looked at Raina curiously. "I want to name this hot pot restaurant Mana Hot Pot Restaurant because the hot pot restaurant was created by the boss, and the new hot pot restaurant is my inheritance and development of the hot pot restaurant." Raina covered her face. "I'm really bad at naming. I thought for a long time, and this is the only name I could think of." Meg's eyes lit up upon hearing that. He smiled and said, "Mana Hot Pot Restaurant. I think it's pretty good. It feels like a sub-brand of Mamie's, and it has a good meaning." Mia nodded and said, "Yeah, I think it's pretty good too. It sounds very familiar, and I know it's our own hot pot restaurant." Amy asked with a smile, "What if Big Sister Phyllis opens a kebab restaurant? Can it be called Mac's Kebab Restaurant?" Meg nodded in agreement. He was also bad at naming. We can keep this naming method as a backup. Then I'll use this name." Raina thought that the name she came up with would be ridiculed, but she didn't expect to receive everyone's approval. After everyone left, Meg went upstairs to wash up, and then told the 2 children a bedtime story. After he coaxed them to sleep, he ignored Irina's eyes and went back to his room. He locked the door and lay down on his bed. He took a few deep breaths and pushed open the test field for the god of cookery. "Let's have a battle of eyes." A white light flashed in front of Meg's eyes, and he came face to face with a wall full of eyeballs. The big eyeballs that were crowded together seemed to have some kind of evil glow, and it made one's hair stand on end. "Fuck. Is there something wrong with you, system?" Meg jumped back in shock. "If you want to roast pig's eyes well, then you must have a deep understanding of pig's eyes. The first step is to identify the real pig's eyes with the naked eye. Host, please find 100 pig's eyes that meet the requirements for roasting from these 10,000 eyeballs." The system's voice sounded, and it was emotionless. Meg's throat moved. Looking at the countless eyeballs in front of him, he felt his scalp go numb, and he had a headache. If he wanted to roast pig's eyes well, he had to get rid of his fear of pig's eyes. Even if he couldn't love them, he had to at least be able to keep his emotions calm when roasting them to prevent the eyeballs from exploding due to mistakes. Roasting was an art on charcoal fire. If he wanted to roast pig's eyes perfectly, his control of the heat and his understanding of each pig's eye would determine whether he could roast a satisfactory pig's eye. Standing in front of the wall of pig's eyes, Meg took a few deep breaths and began to patiently search for the real pig's eyes among the eyeballs. There should be cow's eyes, goat's eyes, and other eyeballs mixed in here. Meg could only rely on the experience in his head to determine the real pig's eyes. This was a very meticulous and long process. From the initial nausea and numbness in his scalp, Meg gradually became numb as he looked at the 10,000 eyeballs. In his eyes, these eyeballs that were originally emitting an evil glow gradually became normal and ordinary ingredients like corn and ham. His goal was to pick out the ingredients he needed from the pile of waste. Once this mentality was formed, his efficiency increased tremendously. Very quickly, he picked out 120 pig's eyes from the 10,000 eyeballs, exceeding the requirements set by the system. Ding! Following a crisp sound, the scene in front of Mag changed, and he appeared in the kitchen that he was familiar with. On the wall beside him, there was also a 365-day countdown timer. Roasted pig's eyes. Luckily, I haven't eaten this dark cuisine before. The requirements shouldn't be too strict, right? Meg muttered to himself as he took out a pot of pig's eyes from the fridge. The eyeballs that were dug out from the roots retained the muscle fibers and subcutaneous fat around the eyeballs. The bamboo skewer could not be pierced through the eyeballs directly, but through the muscles. Otherwise, the person eating the eyeballs would not be able to experience the ritualistic moment when the eyeballs burst. Chapter 1608. Skewers of pig's eyes were placed on the grill. The temperature of the fire must not be too high. Otherwise, the hot liquid might explode and splatter all over one's face. The skewers were flipped back and forth over a small fire. During the process, the skewers were brushed with various sauces and spices, patiently waiting for the eyeballs to be cooked from the inside out. The skin of the pig's eyes sizzled with oil, and the aroma gradually spread out. Seems like it's just like that. Meg raised his eyebrows slightly. He casually flipped the skewers of pig's eyes in his hand and slowly moved them to the area where the fire was more intense. Poof! The sound of an eyeball exploding was heard. One of the eyeballs on the skewers suddenly exploded. The hot liquid splattered everywhere, and a part of it flew toward his face. Damn, it really explodes. Meg tilted his head and easily avoided the liquid. Poof, 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 almost at the same time, the remaining pig's eyes all exploded. Meg quickly let go of the bamboo skewers in his hand and took 2 steps back at the same time. Only then did he narrowly avoid the hot liquid that shot out in all directions after the explosion. This is probably the most dangerous dish I've ever made, right? Meg looked at the grill and the wall that were a mess because of the liquid. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly awkwardly. If this happened in a real kitchen, it would be an accident. Meg did not need to clean up. After about 5 seconds, the grill and the countertop were clean again. Looks like I still have to strictly follow the experience and standards of an expert. I shouldn't be overconfident. Meg quickly adjusted his attitude. He took a bamboo skewer and skewered another skewer of pig's eyes. With a serious expression, he stood in front of the grill and started to roast the pig's eyes again. Roasting the pig's eyes had a very strict requirement on the heat control. This made Mag, who had already mastered the technique of flipping 200 beef kebabs at the same time, a little impatient. However, after experiencing the explosion once, his impatience was suppressed very well. The beef cubes would not explode. This was an ingredient with a temper, and one had to coax it. About 20 minutes later, the pig's eyes had been roasted to a glossy brown color. They had shrunk a lot, and the slightly fat skin had been roasted until it had shrunk and was still sizzling with oil. The tempting aroma of the roasted meat had already reached their nostrils. After sprinkling some cumin and chili and flipping it twice, it was done. With a little bit of patience, it doesn't seem that difficult. Meg sized up the roasted pig's eyes in his hand. There were 4 pig's eyes on a bamboo skewer. After being roasted, the terror value of the pig's eyes plummeted. At the very least, he would not accidentally look into a pair of dead pig's eyes. However, to most people, this kind of appearance was still very impactful, especially after knowing that it was roasted pig's eyes. Many people would probably resist it. Meg looked at the roasted pig's eyes in his hand. If it wasn't for the tempting aroma of the roasted pig's eyes, and the fact that he was already used to eating pig's eyes, he wouldn't have tried this super dark cuisine. System, did I succeed? Meg asked casually. I've never tasted something like roasted pig's eyes in my previous life. There shouldn't be any standards for this dish, right? First point, counting from the top, the skin of the 3rd pig's eye is too dry and hard. Because it has too little oil, it should be brushed with oil during the roasting process. This is a problem that an excellent chef should take the initiative to discover and solve during the cooking process. Second point, the second pig's eye was not tightly fastened. During the roasting process, the position of the second pig's eye shifted, and the entire pig's eye could not reach the standard. Carelessness will ruin the dish. Third point, the system listed all the mistakes that Meg had made during the seemingly perfect roasting process. Now that you mention it, there are indeed quite a lot of problems. Meg nodded and accepted the system's picky suggestions. If it was only to this extent, he would be able to complete the roasted pig's eyes in no time. It was all about the details. The criteria for success in roasted pig's eyes: once you bite into it, the liquid in the pig's eyes will burst out. There is no fishy smell, and it will leave a lasting aftertaste. The eyeball has a chewy texture, and the texture is touching. It is tough on the outside and tender on the inside. It is soft and juicy, and the texture is chewy. The clear lens and cornea are like brittle bones, and it brings a different kind of pleasure when chewing. The system continued to list out the criteria. Meg. Speaking of which, system, if my memory is not lost because of my transmigration, then I haven't eaten roasted pig's eyes before, right? I'm not the one who came up with this kind of ridiculous criteria, am I? Meg asked with a frown. The broader the criteria, the higher the criteria, because the system would implement them according to the highest standards. This is a proposal for a string of life, the system answered. You even copied the proposal. Meg rolled his eyes. Didn't I state where it came from? The system said confidently. Meg opened his mouth, but he was speechless. However, he quickly said, I think this proposal might be boastful. As a candidate for the god of cookery, I have the best experience in roasting. If I can't even meet the requirements of the proposal, then wouldn't it be worse than boasting? You win. Meg thought for a while, and it seemed to make some sense. Soon, he immersed himself in roasting the pig's eyes. Making delicacies that were beyond the imagination of the diners was what a chef with ambition should do. Just like a bowl of ordinary soy milk or an ordinary youtiao, in the hands of different chefs, they could also shine with different colors. What Meg wanted to do was to let the delicacies shine with the most beautiful colors in his hands. The texture is not good enough, failure. The fishy smell of the liquid in the eyeball has not been removed, failure. Failure, the number of days on the wall slowly decreased. Meg accepted failure after failure expressionlessly. His roasting technique became more and more skillful, and the pig's eyes in his hands grew from 1 skewer to 2 skewers, 3 skewers, and finally a whole bunch. For a moment, Meg felt that he had become one with the skewers in his hands and the grill below. He could feel the heat of the charcoal in the grill and feel the subtle changes in the skewers as they were being roasted. Then, he flipped the skewers at the right time and brushed the appropriate oil and sauce on them. This was a very mysterious feeling. It was as if time had slowed down, and he could control everything as he wished. Ding! Perfect roasted pig's eyes achieved. Meg placed a bunch of hungry pig's eyes on the plate in front of him. Then, he heard the system's voice. Did I succeed? Meg did not appear too surprised. Instead, he revealed a hint of surprise. He felt that this serving of roasted pig's eyes was not perfect enough. He could make the next serving better. He raised his head and looked at the countdown on the wall. 100 days had passed without him noticing. No wonder they say that it is not easy to learn how to roast meat. It is even harder to become a master. Meg sighed in his heart. The time he took to learn this roasted pig's eyes was almost the same as the time he took to learn Buddha jumps over the wall. Meg was not in a hurry to leave the test field for the god of cookery. Instead, he continued to immerse himself in roasting the pig's eyes. He wanted to make it more perfect. Chapter 1609. Early in the morning, in Abraham's house, Sean looked at the sleepy Vanessa with a doting smile, and said, "Vanessa, I haven't seen you for a few months. You seem to have grown taller." "Hee, I've been eating a lot of good food here, so I've grown quickly." Vanessa went forward happily. However, she pouted when she saw Sean, and grumbled, "Big brother Sean, you only came to visit me after so long. All you know is fighting. You must have forgotten that you have a younger sister. I've been busy with the war at the borders, and the orcs have been invading again and again. I really couldn't leave." Sean smiled embarrassedly. He looked at his only younger sister, and said, "So, I came to visit you after the war. TSK, you were sent here by Royal Father. You didn't come here just to see me." Vanessa rolled her eyes. She looked at Sean warily, and said, "Tell me, did Royal Father send you to bring me back? You ran away from home for a few months. Royal Father and Royal Mother are very worried about you. Another reason why they sent me to Chaos City is indeed to bring you home. How can you say that I'm bringing you back?" Sean nodded. He looked at Vanessa's white teeth, and was pleasantly surprised. "Also, have you fixed all your teeth? Big sister Irina and big sister Cece fixed them for me." Vanessa nodded. She grinned, and showed off her teeth. "Look, aren't they very neat and white? You look so pretty when you smile." Sean nodded with a smile. Although he was a little surprised that Irina had fixed Vanessa's teeth, he was genuinely happy. He knew that Vanessa had been depressed all these years because of her teeth. He hadn't seen her smile as radiantly as today for many years. That's not important. The important thing is that I don't want to go home now. I like Chaos City, and I want to stay here for a while longer," Vanessa said with a serious expression. She pointed at Abraham, who was drinking his morning tea, and said, with Uncle Abraham, "My little princess, don't drag me down with you." "I don't have the final say in this matter," Abraham said leisurely as he took a sip of tea. "Big brother Sean." Vanessa looked at Sean eagerly. Tears were already glistening in her big eyes. "This is Imperial Father's order. I don't have the final say." Sean shook his head. He looked at the teary Vanessa, and couldn't bear to see her like this. He gently said, "The situation on the continent has been a little unstable recently, and the situation in Chaos City has also become a little complicated. Father is worried about you, so he asked me to bring you home. Furthermore, you've been out for so long, so it's about time you went back to see Father and Mother. I think Chaos City is pretty good. Everyone is very friendly, and it's not complicated at all." Vanessa pursed her lips. When she saw Sean's non-negotiable expression, her expression fell, and she said, "I'm going to Mamie's for dinner tonight. Do you want to come? I'll cancel the banquet at the City Lord's castle tonight." Sean nodded with a smile. He hadn't had a good meal with Vanessa for a long time. Furthermore, he wanted to see what kind of magic that restaurant had that made Vanessa not want to go home. "All right, then I'll wait for you tonight. You must come back early. If you're late, you won't be able to get in line," Vanessa reminded. "Line up?" Sean was a little puzzled. Abraham explained with a smile, "Mamie's has too many customers. If you want to eat, you have to line up. First come, first served. If you're late, you won't be able to get in line. I'll have to trouble Uncle to book this place. I want to have a good dinner with Vanessa tonight. I don't want anyone else to be around," Sean said to Abraham. As the first prince, princess, and duke of the Roth Empire, they actually had to line up to eat at a restaurant. Furthermore, they had to share a room with other customers. That was not befitting of his status. "Although I have the money, I don't have the ability. I'm afraid even City Lord Michael might not be able to book this place. Abraham shrugged, indicating that he didn't want to try. The owner of this restaurant has a powerful background. Sean was puzzled. It's not that he has a powerful background. He's just a little more unique. Abraham shook his head with a smile. Do you still remember the chef who won the best royal banquet at the king's birthday banquet? Yes. Sean thought for a moment before nodding. Josh had relied on that chef to suppress him at the birthday banquet. And that chef actually rejected the king's invitation to join the royal kitchen. Although he was a small fry, he did leave an impression on him. This restaurant is opened by him. He's a restaurant owner who treats all customers equally. Even City Lord Michael has to line up when he comes to eat at this restaurant. You want me to book the entire place? Abraham shrugged with a smile. This chap. Sean frowned. Mr. Mac is super nice. My teeth were cured because of him. Furthermore, he even gave me toothpaste and a toothbrush, and told me how to keep my teeth clean so that I don't have to worry about them going bad again. Also, the dishes he cooks are really delicious. Spicy grilled fish, beggar's chicken, red meat, steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers, spicy crayfish, and the most delicious hot pot. He's simply a chef who's a treasure given to us by the heavens. He constantly creates delicious food for us, and subverts our imaginations time and time again. Furthermore, the rules he sets are completely on the side of the customers. Although it makes it a little inconvenient for those with special privileges, it allows those who truly love good food to have a fair chance. Vanessa looked at Sean and said with a serious face, Big brother Sean, if you try to break Mamie's rules, then I can only decide not to bring you to eat good food. Sean looked at Vanessa's serious face. He rarely saw such an expression on her face. It seemed that she really did like that chef and that restaurant. After a moment of hesitation, he smiled and said, In that case, I'll come back early. I should also properly thank the chef who satisfied my sister's appetite for good food and cured her teeth. Okay. I'll wait for you. Vanessa nodded happily, and then walked straight out of the door. As she walked, she said, Uncle, do you want to go eat soy milk and youtiao? If not, I won't wait for you. Of course I'm going. Aren't I waiting for you? Abraham put down his teacup anxiously, and walked to the door. He stopped at the door, and turned back to look at Sean, and said, Sean, you must be very busy today, so we won't be entertaining you. Let's have a good drink tonight. All right. Sean nodded in response, and couldn't help but burst into laughter at the sight of Abraham's departing figure. He took a sip of tea from his teacup before also making his way toward the door. He was indeed very busy today, and had to have a formal discussion with the people of Chaos City. Chapter 16:10. The news of the Marquis family being investigated, and the arrest of Bowen and his son caused quite a stir in Chaos City's business circle. As one of the 4 major families in Chaos City, and one of the founding families of the Aden Chamber of Commerce, the Marquis family had a fortune of hundreds of millions. Nobody expected the Marquis family to fall so suddenly. Although the gap between the Marquis family and the Dodges family had been widened by the Buffett family and the family Moreton in recent years, the Marquis family was still a huge force in Chaos City. Previously, when the news of Bennett's downfall and arrest spread, many people were guessing if the Marquis family would be implicated. However, from what happened afterward, not only was the Marquis family not implicated by Bennett's matter, they even took the opportunity to take over some of Bennett's assets that were clean on the surface, and became the biggest winner. Unexpectedly, the Great Temple's sword fell on the Marquis family's head in just a few days, and that made everyone sigh. Some people said that the Marquis family had taken advantage of Bennett's power, and also touched properties that they shouldn't have, so they were investigated. Others said that the head of the Marquis family forcefully took over Bennett's assets and attracted the Grey Temple's attention, so they were investigated. Some even said that Bowen's son had seduced the concubine of some big shot in the Grey Temple, and that led to the tragedy. Bowen is too greedy. I told his old man that back then. If it were me, I would rather hand the family over to that prodigal son, Bennett, than to Bowen, Ian lamented as he took a sip of tea and looked at Hill, who hadn't finished his breakfast. Hill put a small piece of bread into his mouth, chewed it carefully, and swallowed it. He picked up the white silk handkerchief beside him and carefully wiped the corner of his mouth. After confirming that there was no food residue left, he said with an indifferent expression, "That prodigal is now in prison, waiting to be damned eternally." If old Marquis had been a little more fair to him back then, such a mess wouldn't have happened, Ian lamented. Then, I'm afraid the Marquis family is doomed. Even if Bennett replaces Bowen as the head of the Marquis family, I'm afraid he won't be an obedient family head, Hill said as he shook his head. Ian was stunned. He looked at the hill and thought about it seriously. He couldn't help but smile and say, "Of the four great families, my eyes are indeed the best." "I agree." Hill nodded. Ian quickly retracted his smile, and continued, "It's best that our family doesn't get involved in this matter. Since Dominic has been arrested, it seems like the city lord is determined to clean up the gray areas in Chaos City. I reckon many people will be arrested soon. I've already done a self-inspection. The problematic fellows have already been handed over to the Grey Temple. We'll deal with them as we see fit." The Hill nodded. "Very good." Ian put down his teacup and stood up with a smile. "Do you want to go feed the fish?" "No. I have to make a trip to the city lord's castle later to meet that first prince who came from afar." The Hill shook his head. "Go ahead. I have to go fishing." Ian didn't ask any more questions, and left slowly with his hands behind his back. The Hill stood up and watched Ian leave the restaurant before walking to the door. He asked his assistant, who was following him quickly with a briefcase, "Have you found out if the Marquis family's investigation has anything to do with Mr. Meg?" "There's no evidence to prove that there's a definite connection between the two at the moment. However, an employee from Amy's called Raina received a shop that originally belonged to Bennett as a gift a few days ago. During this period of time, she and the Marquis family had some disputes over the ownership of the shop," the secretary replied quickly. "Employee?" The Hill frowned. "Yes. Bennett seemed to have been pestering her previously. This shop should have been given to her directly by the Grey Temple and the city lord's castle." The secretary nodded, and continued, "If there's a need, I can investigate the reason behind it." "There's no need for that. I was also worried that Mr. Meg would be bullied by the Marquis family. Now, it seems like my worries were completely unnecessary. This matter ends here. There's no need to investigate too thoroughly." The Hill stopped him. "Yes." The secretary nodded, and began to report the next matter. Meg exited the test field for the god of cookery. When he opened his eyes, the alarm clock beside him rang almost at the same time. He was stunned for a moment before reaching out to turn off the alarm clock. After being alone for more than 100 days in a space where there was only the crackling of the charcoal fire and the sizzling of the pig's eyes on the grill, even the sound of the alarm clock had become pleasing to the ear. "Why don't I release the roasted pig's eyes today, and roast them in front of the open display window?" The corners of Meg's lips slowly curled up. Otherwise, how could he live up to his hard work of roasting the pig's eyes for more than 100 days and nights? The number of pig's eyes that he had roasted could encircle a pig farm 10 times. What a picturesque advertising slogan. Meg didn't waste too much time in bed. After slightly dispelling the discomfort from being in the test field for the god of cookery for so long, he got out of bed and took a cold shower. After changing into a clean chef's uniform, He went downstairs to prepare breakfast for everyone. As he was worried that he would scare everyone early in the morning and affect their appetite for the day, Meg resisted the urge to add the roasted pig's eyes into the luxurious breakfast set. "Father, what delicious food are you making today?" Amy was the first to come downstairs. She stood on her tiptoes at the entrance of the kitchen to look. "Soy milk, youtiao, tofu pudding, everything. Amy can eat whatever you want." Meg turned around to look at Amy, who had long silver hair and a strand of a hoe on top of her head, and said with a smile. The little girl had already changed into a white down jacket. Her round, penguin-like figure made her look very cute, but her hair was still uncombed. Due to Irina's unique hair combing skills, Meg took the initiative to take on the task of combing Amy's hair. After all, she always had her hair down and didn't have any experience in combing hair. She was usually as fierce as a tiger, and her hairstyle was like a lightning rod. Amy thought seriously for a while, then said, "Then I'll have a set of youtiao with sweet tofu pudding, and a set of black pepper steak. I want it medium well, with a little more sweet and sour tomato sauce." "Okay, let's eat together when the big sisters are here." Meg nodded with a smile. He didn't have any objections to the little girl's pairing. After all, she could come up with different ways to eat every day. During breakfast, Meg announced that he would be adding a new dish for the day. Roasted pig's eyes. Barbara, who was drinking soy milk, choked and looked at Meg in disbelief. "Are they really pig's eyes?" Mia also looked at Meg in surprise. All the girls had similar expressions. They were surprised and a little frightened. "Yes, they are roasted pig's eyes." Meg nodded with certainty. Wonderful book house. Chapter 16:11. Pigs are so cute. Won't their eyes be crispy and tasty when they're roasted? Amy asked curiously. "Well, I guess so." Meg nodded with a smile. Indeed, only a true foodie could see through the surface. "Anyway, I refuse to eat this kind of weird food," Irina declared. "I refuse too." Barbara raised her hand in agreement. Just hearing the name of the dish was enough to make her scalp tingle, let alone trying roasted eyes. "I don't dare to eat it either," Anna said softly. I also." Jane raised her hand weakly, looking weak, helpless, and pitiful. At that moment, other than Amy and Raina, the rest of the people actually expressed that they were not willing to try this dish. Just the name alone made them feel uncomfortable. "Raina, are you willing to try it?" Meg looked at Raina. She was the only one who sat there quietly and did not express her opinion. Raina looked at Meg with anticipation. Although she was fearful of the unknown roasted pig's eyes, there were bound to be people who were willing to sacrifice and try it on the road to the birth of delicacies. Obviously, the boss needed such people now. After hesitating for a while, she nodded firmly. "I can try it." "It's okay, you don't have to force yourself. I will officially launch this dish tonight. Let the customers make their choice." Meg smiled. He could tell that Raina was still a little fearful of the roasted pig's eyes. He was touched that she nodded, but there was no need for her to be a guinea pig. "Launch it directly." Raina looked at Meg in surprise. She had never seen Meg make roasted pig's eyes before. He had proposed this dish early in the morning. Was he going to put it on the menu for the customers to order without letting anyone try it? "Yes." Meg nodded and explained, "This is a dish from my hometown. I'm confident." Raina nodded slightly and did not ask any more questions. When the boss said he was confident, he had never failed. After the morning service, Meg took out a small blackboard, wrote a line of words on it, and hung it on the door. Then, Meg moved a reclining chair and placed it at the door. There was a small stove beside his hand and a pottery pot on top of it. The fragrance of black tea flowed out along with the steam. Basking in the warm winter sun, Meg closed his eyes contentedly and enjoyed this rare leisure time. After a while, Meg tilted his head and looked at Gloria, who was standing beside the teapot. He sat up and smiled. "Miss Gloria, when did you arrive?" In fact, he had sensed that someone was coming 5 minutes ago. The familiar fragrance allowed him to guess who it was without opening his eyes. The warm winter sun was too comfortable, so he was reluctant to open his eyes. "I've just arrived. Sorry to disturb Mr. Meg's sunbathing," Gloria said apologetically. Perhaps it was because the sun was too hot today, or perhaps it was because the side of his face with his eyes closed was too sharp, but her face was slightly red. "I'm just taking a nap under the sun." "How is that disturbing?" Meg smiled and shook his head. He pointed at the chair beside the stove and said, "The tea is ready. I was worried that no one would drink it with me. I wonder if Miss Gloria has the time to drink with me." "My pleasure." Gloria smiled and sat down. She naturally picked up the handkerchief on the table and poured the amber tea into 2 cups. Speaking of which, the two had already drunk tea together a few times. They could be considered close tea friends. The fragrance of the tea slowly drifted over, causing one's state of mind to gradually calm down. "Suede must be very busy these days, right?" Meg asked with a smile as he held the thick ceramic cup in his hand. He felt the warmth from the cup through his fingertips. "Yes. I bought a piece of land in the north of the city and built a new factory. I'm planning to move all the production lines to the factory in the north of the city after I finish making the down jackets." Gloria nodded slightly. "The new factory is already built?" Meg was slightly surprised. He didn't expect Gloria to be so bold and decisive. Last month, he heard from her that the current factory wasn't enough to provide the clothes needed by Suede. He didn't expect her to buy a piece of land and build a new factory so quickly. "Yes." Gloria nodded. Then she said with a bit of worry, "It's just that tailors are too hard to hire. Many tailors have very high salary requirements. They're almost charging according to the price they set for the tailors themselves, which raises the cost a lot. Charging according to the price they set for the tailors with ready-made blueprints." Meg raised his eyebrows. These tailors were too shameless. Maybe they know the price of suede. Here's my personal opinion. Since we're moving to a new factory, let's further split the process of making the clothes. As long as we standardize the process, except for the high-end clothes, we only need the assembly line workers to make the clothes in batches. We don't need tailors at all. Meg looked at Gloria and suggested, "You can pick a group of honest and reliable tailors from the existing tailors. Let them be the workshop supervisors and technicians. They'll be responsible for managing the different processes and ensuring the quality of the clothes." Further splitting the process. Gloria thought carefully for a while. Then her eyes lit up and she said, "If we can further split the process, we can solve the shortage of tailors and the problem of the high cost of labor. The tailors who are promoted to management positions can continue to use their expertise and control the overall quality of the clothes. This is indeed the most efficient way right now. Because this is a brand new model, you have to have a trustworthy assistant who can control the overall situation. At the same time, you need a group of workers who are easy to manage so that Suede can get through the transition period quickly," Meg continued. "Uncle Mars is a very talented manager. He's been managing the factory for me during this period. I believe he'll be able to handle the management of the new factory. As for the workers..." A conflicted look appeared on Gloria's face. Blue Suede already had over 200 employees, and there were indeed some lazy and disobedient workers among them. The new factory still needed to recruit more workers, and it was most likely going to be difficult to recruit good workers. Do you know that a group of elves came to Chaos City recently? Meg asked. I heard that Princess Irina of the elven race brought tens of thousands of elves to Chaos City. Gloria nodded. This wasn't a secret in Chaos City, but she didn't know why Meg was bringing it up. Princess Irina has been dining at Mamie's recently. I can ask her if there are any elves who need jobs. Perhaps she can help you solve the problem of workers, Meg said with a smile. Elven workers. Gloria was pleasantly surprised. Elves were the most well-received species in Chaos City's employee market. Both their work attitude and work efficiency were highly valued by all bosses. If the new factory could be replaced with a group of elven workers, it would definitely be a good thing for Suede. Bookhouse reading website. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.